Holding my hand in the darkness, seeing ghosts down the hallway. There's a presence, bedroom shadows, cloaked and haunting me, cold hand touching me, fear overwhelming me, tapping at my window. I can't bear to open my eyes, a breath on my neck, floating apparitions everywhere. Go to sleep with the light on, I wake up paralyzed. Ghostly apparition hovering over me, asking what it wants to know. I'm shaking now, it calls out my name, cloaked and haunting me, cold hand touching me, fear overwhelming me, tapping at my window. I can't bear to open my eyes, a breath on my neck, floating apparitions everywhere. Go to sleep with the light on, I wake up paralyzed. Sweet, sweet Alice, step through the looking glass, step through the looking glass, whimsical but illogical, peculiar, strange, a white rabbit with a clock on a chain. He's late for a very important day, but I must follow, I must know where the white rabbit goes. Skeleton keys open everything, a wonderland key to change everything. Doors so small, wondering who could fit in there at all. A potion to drink, one sip it'll take. What a mistake. The wonderland cake, another mistake. Alice's tears begin a lake so big the game is rigged. Peculiar, strange, a white rabbit with a clock on a chain. He's late for a very important day, but I must follow, I must know where the white rabbit goes. Friend or foe, the caterpillar, no smoke, rings of wisdom, magic mushrooms in this kingdom size to control. Alice continues her stroll. Peculiar, strange, a white rabbit with a clock on a chain. He's late for a very important day, but I must follow, I must know where the white rabbit goes. Red-headed teleport is so bizarre, and everything is changed by far, confusing and absurd. The conversation is a blur, nonsensical riddles like playing a grasshopper as a fiddle. Why is the raven like a riding desk? I'm sure the answer is somewhere in the middle. It's all in perspective to say what you mean and to mean what you say. Peculiar, strange, a white rabbit with a clock on a chain. a cat grinning. Advice on direction with no goals of his own. Persistent grin, philosophical debates. He knew the white rabbit was always gonna be late. Peculiar, strange, a white rabbit with a clock on a chain. He's late for a very important day. But I must follow, I must know where the white rabbit goes. Queen of hearts with unfair trials, executions for everyone all the while. She does this all with a frown, not a smile. Angry is she with her unforgivable deeds. 7, 5, 2, what do you do when it's off with your head? You paint the roses red. Ooh, painted the roses red. They'll still find themselves dead. No, it's off with her head. Alice wakes up in her bed.
Something changed inside of me. The inner human slowly dead in me. I feel it come alive. The darkness brings me light. There ain't no stopping it, and you will never hide from me. Pain of the change. What have I become? A creature of the night, ruled by moonlight. The pain of the change. This body's no longer mine. Feel wild and free, but caged at the same time. It's time to be human, think human, feel human. A hunger's arising inside of me. The beast is alive.
All right, folks. Welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and this is PRT. Join us in the real reality. And you're looking at me going like, he's wearing a SpongeBob hat. Because we got to hang loose. This is I told everybody I was going to go home and change, wear one of my black shirts, but this is a comfortable shirt, so I just decided to wear this. It's a nice shirt. So I hope everybody's having a good time. I sent the link to our colleagues, so hopefully they got it and we can get started here pretty soon. Oh, man. I had I was going to say Sunday, I have a show going, a plan for Sunday, and it's a Bigfoot show. Well, it also deals with ghosts, and there's a little bit of other stuff in there too. But I'm going to ask some questions from our guests when they arrive, because I wonder about this too. And so people, they're like, oh well, Bigfoot's a flesh and blood thing, or it's a spirit, it's a that. The thing is, we don't know. But imagine if you were living in a place that had a mirror and Bigfoot would come in and out of it. Can you imagine that? And I'm talking like some weird, wild stuff, like a Bigfoot-like creature coming in and out of a mirror, which is terrifying to me. And so it was a very interesting, and I would say highly unique, but it's not really highly unique. If it was something that had gotten maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I'd say, oh, this is very unique. But knowing what we know now and knowing what we've seen from these entities, this isn't unique. They do this. Entities travel through these portals, through these mirrors. I hope everybody enjoyed the episode on Wednesday where we talked about the portals. And I know toward the end there, I just started like machine gun firing encounter after encounter, but we didn't even scratch the surface of how many of these there are, of encounters that people have with entities coming out of these portals. So anyways, my colleagues are in the back here. Let's get them in. Okay. Oh, hey guys, how you doing?
Good. Oh yeah.
That's a nice tumbler you got there. I like that.
Got my shirt on.
You got your PRT in the hat too. I see the hat.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
actually, yeah. We didn't even know we was going to be doing this until earlier, but I still had this on.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what happened was, folks, we double booked. We had another guy that was supposed to be on, but we had planned that since like early May. And I think what happened was, when you plan out too far ahead, sometimes then things end up. And I had asked you guys earlier in the week. I said, "Hey, can you guys come on?" And then I found out on the planner or whatever on my desk that was buried underneath a million papers. I said, "Oh crap!" So I messaged you guys back. I said, "Can you come back next week?" Because I jumped the gun on it, but I was eager to have you guys on, and it works out. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are here. So you guys have been busy. You've been really busy. A new book, right? A new book,
Yeah.
and a couple of my favorite guests, and I'm glad you're back. So I'm eager for this. So I got questions. I got a lot of questions, but before we do, let's introduce you guys. You introduce yourself, or you want me to introduce you, or what?
Either you or Josh.
Well, I mean, I could say it. The great and honorable Jerry Williams from the Choctaw Nation and lead tracker E, also known as Ella. Very good friends of mine. Ella is actually, she does moderating for the show. So that's she's an awesome person. And Jerry, awesome guy. So and you know who called me right before the show was Charles.
Oh.
Love Charles Hamill, war chief. And he called me up and he was looking for guys, give him some prayers. He lost his wife back in December. And I feel for the guy. And he's a great guy. He's always a very, very nice, kind man. And got an incredible story. Yeah. And it is an amazing story. I don't know what it is. We talked about a Bigfoot encounter not too long ago where it involved one of these creatures coming up and it was in Saskatchewan, and it took somebody's fish Like the guy was fishing and it just walked right up and just took it. They don't care.
Nothing.
They don't care. They'll take whatever. They'll take, they'll hurt you. They don't care. But yet still people do silly things like, hey, I was giving them apples and I baked them a pie and I gave them my children. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, what is wrong with you?
That's,
So is that the new one?
that's one of the new ones. We've
What-
got a couple out.
This
That's the
is-
Spanish version.
It's just a chapter out of the other book that we're working on. It's not out yet, but this is the Spanish version, Las Ofrendas de Pa Grande, which is the Bigfoot offerings, or the offering to the Bigfoot.
Yeah.
The English version is called Bigfoot Gifters, and like you're talking about them talking about giving apples and stuff like that. There's a lot that comes with that, and people just don't know what they're doing when they whoop or call or whistle or try to gift them. But in our book, we talk about how it's a mating ritual. It's kind of like if we go on a date, in our society, we give flowers or we give candy or, we may buy a trinket or give them just pick up a stone or something. But that's a ritual. It's even in the animal kingdom, the insect kingdom. There's a spider called the gifting spider who will wrap up a fly and give it to, or an insect and give it to a female, so that female will come up and it'll mate with it. So it's a mating ritual, even in the spider society. So
Yeah. And okay, so what you were talking about, when we were young, when I was a kid and we would go down to the first time I had an encounter with something, I didn't see anything, but I heard it. So I don't really count things like real small, like as encounters, but there's a lot of weird stuff that happened. Like I was down in the valley and we were visiting some people down in Edinburgh, and the mission down there, it was, what city was that in? The mission. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I'm so tired. I've been running around all day. Forgive me. Dealing with like phone situation. It's just crazy. With wife helping her with her phone situation. There's a down in the valley. We used to go every year. And so we were there at the family friends of our families or whatever, Hispanic family, I'm part Native and Hispanic on my mom's side and Comanche. And so we were with some people, same thing. They were Hispanic and they were Lipan Apache. And they told us,
Thinking of San Juan?
San Juan.
Yeah.
The mission. I said, I always do that. I always yell, whoa, I discovered fire. No. And then everybody's like, dude, my ears are bleeding here, Chewbacca. But no, what ends up happening, I was a little kid. I was like a niño, like little boy, like a 9, maybe 8. And I was 4th grade. What is that? 8 years old. And they told me, they said, if you hear a whistle, don't whistle back. So I was a child and I was with Anthony. I was with your uncle, me and Ralph. We were down there and with your grandmother and a bunch of other people. And so we hear a whistling noise and I didn't whistle back, but Ralph did. And then that night he had a visitor. He had something that came to him while he was asleep. And, for years we talked about it. It was like he said it was like a bird-like entity that came through the window, like as a spirit. And I always wondered, like as a kid, I was like, how could that thing be a physical thing? People see it, la lechuza, as they call it, but then it's also like a spirit. And I always wondered about that. Well, my tia Hova would always say that these things start off as a what is that? Oh yeah, never whistle in the woods. Same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's in the new children's book, Monster Spotters.
Yeah, that's very pertinent. And that's the thing. There's so many people who've gone out into the woods or they've gone out into the I can't help it. I think that's a funny cover.
Yes.
It is.
It gets your attention.
It
Yeah.
does.
It grabs your attention. And so people go out into the woods and they'll say, well, I heard something. And so I started answering it and I knocked back. And I'm like, that is the worst thing you could do. I mean, because you wouldn't, and if you're Hispanic, you don't do that with lechuza, which a lot of times these encounters with lechuza, they don't happen in the woods. They happen in the middle of the city. We were walking to the store And there was 4 of us, and my older cousin was with us, and he was like, "Don't whistle back if you hear something." It was like 10 o'clock at night. And sure enough, we heard it. And I looked at my cousin, and my cousin Ralph was always the one that would do something not correct. And he did it. And then he goes, "Look, nothing happened." And then later that night, he had a dream like an encounter with an entity. Since that encounter, he had it multiple times. And he said it wasn't until he went away overseas that it stopped. But there was a guy that I remember from the Philippines that had something very similar. And I can tell you right now, he invited it to him. And it was the Oswang, which is like a demonic creature, vampiric creature. And they were out in the jungle of Philippines. They were walking from one like village to the next. It wasn't even that long, maybe a mile. And he brought this thing to him. But that's another story. So you guys, you have people who do these things, and you tell them don't do these things, and they do it anyway.
Mhm.
So then you guys got to come out and help them, rid themselves of these things, or
Yeah, we found that some people love the attention they get from having the problem. There's a certain percentage that claim they want help, and you go there and help them and give them all the correct things to do and the ways to deter. But then you're not really following through and doing that because they're getting something out of the connection. They like that. They like having the attention of the problem, the attention from the entities, the attention from the Bigfoot, attention from
Viewers, from people watching.
yeah.
Mm.
And it's
Want
not
to
a
milk it.
high percentage, but it's definitely an issue.
I was going to ask Ella why that is, why that would be, but then I thought about it, and I was like, people, they want to feel special.
Yeah.
You know, I feel so special. Bigfoot talks to me.
Yeah.
I'm the chosen one.
We tell them.
Like in every movie ever.
You're the one chosen to be eaten. That's it.
In fact, we played that song before on the Watching Wednesdays of "I'm special, so special," because it's what they, and we're trying to tell them, no, you're not. You're not special. You're not special to any demon. You're not special to any
Not at all.
Bigfoot. You're interchangeable,
You're
just like you would
food.
be with any other predator.
Mhm.
You're an
Pray.
opportunity.
And you're fooling yourself if you think that they're going to give you special privileges, because they will collect one day.
Oh yeah, they always do. And Valerie Guy says the ego is a beast that never gets full. That's exactly true. So Jerry, I want to ask you this, if you could do this for my audience, because I know not everybody may not remember. You know, we got new people coming and going all the time. But you told us in private, and then when you were down here, but then you guys you told the story before. But for those that don't know, can you tell them the Choctaw creation story?
Well, that's it's actually in our book also, or the first book, which was the Bigfoot and Spiritual Warrior's Path. I can kind of paraphrase because
There you go.
yeah, but it's actually about a cosmic spider coming to Earth. It's not, we were not supposed to have spiders here, and before that, we didn't have predators here. We had only fresh spring water and clear waters. But when the spiders pierced, and this is probably deeper than most people get to, but the filament is an eye lens of what we call the cosmic baby. So, and the earth is a baby. It's a living being. So when that piercing, and that piercing still in the sky today, but when that sharp piercing pierced the eye lens, it allowed dark, murky, salty water to enter into Earth, but also spiders entered into Earth at that same time when that water was coming in. Just kind of like the song, the Itsy Bitsy Spider went up the water spout, down came the rain and washed the spider out. But for the spider to go up the water spout, it's actually coming through the filament, but downward, but it's actually going upward. Well, with the piercing, it's actually going upward because the world has been turned upside down, turned over backwards. And that's what a spider does. Once it bites something, it'll turn it over and get it backwards to feed on it. And so the cosmic spider came into the earth, and that's where this predator DNA comes from. And it first started with the serpent, which is the Milky Way. So it took that DNA and brought it here too. And you're going to find this in the Egyptian Dendra zodiac. If you look at that zodiac, you're going to see this exact same story. You're going to find it in the Aztec sunstone. But that DNA came in and changed the dove into the crow, or into the raven, into the falcon. It put that predator DNA into the bird. The fish, now you got sharks, now you got 8-armed octopuses. You've got all these bottom feeders, everything feeds on each other. Parasites, we didn't have parasites until then. Spores, all these things are predator DNA that comes from that cosmic spider, and it's in everything, every kind of plant, every parasite, every animal has been changed. There's some people who are walking around who look like us, but they're pure predators, and they they look just like us. They talk like us and everything, but you know, they feed on people, they eat people, they drink the blood, they do all that. All the animals are contaminated. There's a good side and a bad side, or good things and bad things. And that predator DNA has been here since that spider got here. And in that story, it talks about how the mixture happened because only the spider can make that mixture. Whatever the spider eats or ingests, it uses that DNA to produce another one, like the bell spider, the wolf spider, the fish spider, all different kinds of spiders can be produced from the DNA of something else. And so man has also been put into that mix. And so now there's a man-like hybrid being made, but it wasn't formed correctly in the beginning because it's just forming. But the more people that it ate, the more man-like features it started getting to, but it still got the predator DNA, the predator hair, and all that. So this thing is a predator, and it started forming what the natives of the Americas call the arrival of evil. Because we've never seen this, and it's got a bite like fire. It's in the old story. It's bite like fire and paralyzing. And those are the same attributes of the spider. And so this man-like creature with fur eats not only humans, but it eats itself too. It's a cannibal. So it'll eat its own, the smaller ones or whatever it can feed on. And it has that demon's appetite. It cannot be filled, and it eats and eats and eats and eats. And so this thing, with the more people that it ate, become more man-like and more of man features. But I mean, some are hairless, and some are still furry. But there's also a human, because you got man, you got humans, and you got this predator, Bigfoot, and there's humans who look just like us, who are predators. And you got man, who's by the original creation. And then you got the Bigfoot, that's a mixture of all that together, plus the animals, plus that spider DNA. So it carries all the DNAs of all the animals, the bird, the fish, the ram, the dog, the bull, the goose. But it's a combination of everything, but not a completion of anything. It can't be a bird. It can't be a man. It can't be a dog. It can't be a bull. But without eating all that stuff, it will revert back to its original, which will be a spider.
So let me ask you guys a question, and this is for either one of you, but what do you think the connection is between this and the crawler, the pale crawler? A lot of times people see this thing crawling around like a spider. Sometimes people see Bigfoot and Dogman doing the same thing, but especially with this pale crawler-like creature, people will see it and they'll be like, man, this thing looked like a spider. One person that was talking about this recently from Wyoming, they were in the reservation, the Shoshone Reservation. And thank you for that donation, Tracker One. But the person that was describing, because my cousin used to stay on the reservation, the Wind River, and it's crazy. Like we interviewed a couple people from there, and one of them was telling us that they saw this pale crawler-like thing. It wasn't real big. It was only about 4 foot, and it was on a tree. And get this, the face of this thing looked like a clown. Kind of like, some people have claimed to have seen like this with the white face and sort of a red right here in the middle. Not like the nose, but it was like the nose and the lips together, kind of made like a red triangle. And they said it looked clown-like, but that it turned its head around and that it crawled. It just flipped its limbs and then was on the ground and was like crawling. And it had a man-like head, but it was kind of like oval with a weird-looking mouth kind of hanging down with little fangs. Very spider-like, but only 4 limbs. But I've also heard people say that the 4 limbs, and I know, Anthony, you know this, we've heard people say that the 4 limbs will jut out and become 2 limbs each, which is 8. That's an 8-legged creature. And so I'm wondering about that.
Just another hybrid. It's just another mutation of the same DNA picking up different features from different things. We would have spider DNA in it.
Yeah.
Also,
This kind of spider DNA.
yeah, and also those 4, that's just for like an urban camouflage. Because people will, and some spiders will fold their arms together like those 4 to have 2 arm and 2 leg, and they'll stand up, or it'll
I've seen that.
pierce itself up to look like a human or a man.
Yeah.
And people walk right up to it, or they'll talk and call and think that it's. But there's a lot of Indians who don't know this history, and they get their history from the residential school survivors. They weren't taught all these ancient, or how to read the hieroglyphs or the ancient stories. They get their information from the residential school survivors, who only got a little bit of information, and those are the ones who'll tell you, give a gift before you walk through the forest, or ask permission to go into the forest or through it. Those don't understand that this is a predator, but they're thinking that you can gift something and you'll be okay.
You can negotiate with it.
Yeah. So even if you gift it, you're still not a guarantee that you're going to make it through that forest.
Yeah. That's the nature of evil. And let me give you an example. We had a woman who told us a story. It was in Nevada. Was it Carson City? It was in Carson City, and she was staying in Nevada, and she worked at a golf course or something like that. I think it was Carson City. And she was saying that she got to know this guy, and he was sort of a drifter. And this happened back in the 70s. She's older now. She's like 82, I believe. But she told us this story, and I was waiting for this with you guys. And she said that this guy was a vampire. But here's the thing, and it was something that I was going to put in my book, but then I thought about it, and that the book's almost complete. And I said, look, I don't think I'm going to put this one in there, but if I ever get a chance to get Jerry and Ella back on, I'm going to tell this one, and here it is. And so she said that this guy got really angry at her, and his eyes, they didn't do this like that slit thing where it goes like the reptilian. It was kind of this way, sideways, and his mouth, his jaw kind of opened up, and she had seen some weird things around the house, not the least of which was what she thought, this is crazy. But it's not unheard of. I had somebody here in Austin tell me this, where they claim to have seen this spider-like, humanoid spider-looking thing eating moldy bread. I know it sounds absolutely crazy, but I know the guy. He's from Bastrop, and he's not prone to like making stuff up. Like I've known him for a while, for several years. And he told me this. His son did originally. And actually, his son was the one that had us do the investigation, Anthony. Remember that? We almost ran into a huge spider in the web. It was like this big. Gnarly. It was so big. We didn't see Bigfoot or Dogman, but we almost ran into a gnarly-looking spider. But he was talking about, he said, speaking of spiders, he started telling us about his dad's encounter. I know his dad. He used to be always in the show, whatever. But I wondered about this one. This woman said that this thing, I say thing because it wasn't a man. He could talk like a man and he could do things like a man, but there was something about him. So she said there was one of two things. It was either a vampire, alien, or both. But when she started describing his arm, she said one day when he got really mad that this part of his arm, he was born with some sort of, this is what he claimed, which I think is an absolute lie, but that his arm, the bone in his arm could come apart, come off of his rest of his arm. I said, who could do that? Like, who could literally do that? And so I told her, I said, and I said the exact same thing you did. I said, there are people that look like us, but they're not us. They are like flesh puppets for demons. Like, this is a vessel and they're using it. Maybe this guy at one time was a human. Maybe he opened himself up to perfect possession. I don't know. Maybe he was always that way. But I do believe that there are, and of course, Rivasi was in here. He's from Codega's Codex of Curiosities, and he said something about, and I posted the comment, that there are different species that look human. Mm-hmm. I think that could be one of them. And I told her, I said, did it ever cross your mind that that's like a spider? But she's like, well, his legs couldn't do it. It's just his arms. And I'm like, and he always wore long sleeve shirts. And she's like, they had gone out on 4 or 5 dates before she noticed this deformity. And I told her, I said, that never happened. You never like that. Like, how does that happen? But I've had women tell me too, saying that mostly it's women that get preyed on by these things, of a guy that literally bent his head backwards and she could see all these teeth. And I'm like almost like a plant. The way she described it was like the plant from the Super Mario game. And she's telling us this, and we're all like, what in the hell is that? But I had an ex-girlfriend from years ago. I've told this story on there. She thought it was a vampire, that a guy whose mouth had opened up like that, like Baraka from Mortal Kombat or something. But I've only heard a few times where somebody's limbs would split, and it's usually somebody that sees it, like at a distance. Somebody said that they were driving through the mall parking lot and it was late at night. So they cut through the mall parking lot and they saw somebody crawl like a person, crawling like a spider. And their limbs were split kind of like that, like on each side. And I was like, that's 4 legs on each side. But they were human looking. So you get these weird stories that people give you. And I think that people will tell me because they know that I've covered this stuff before. And there's been a few other people who've pointed these things out, but not many, because it sounds so crazy. It sounds like you're like losing your damn mind if you tell somebody, I saw a spider person. So that's why I think she prefaced it with, well, my boyfriend was a vampire. So I told her this, and maybe I'm wrong, but I said, I think he was vampiric, but I think there was more going on than just him being a vampire, because I think that's a very broad category, and that a lot of these entities and these creatures are vampires or vampiric. They drink blood. Spiders will drain your fluids.
Foot too, yeah.
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 They'll take a bird. A giant bird-eating spider from Africa will take a bird and exsanguinate it in minutes. Mm-hmm. So they're vampiric.
Even some of the drowning victims that are taken by the Bigfoot, if they would look, they generally take them to the middle of the lakes, and if they would check those drowning victims for blood loss, they would find that they've had the blood removed. They think they drowned, but it was really something else.
Where at and how often?
Every time. Yeah, those drowning victims. And we have one of our trackers look into one of the drownings, and they found that it was right in the center of that lake. And that's also in our book. I'm not sure what page it's on. And we talk about water spirits, that they will take the body to the middle of the lake, middle of a pond. And that's the deepest area, and they'll put debris on it, trees or whatever. So if there's a drowning victim, that's the first place they should look, in a lake or a pond. But then they should take that body and check for blood loss, because they'll drink that blood, and if people find the body, then they've already got the blood, they already got the DNA, and it's still a nutrient. It's just what they want. But if nobody does come look for that person, they still have the meat and the flesh, and they'll eat that later.
They'll store it later. Like
But
an
every time
alligator.
it's going to be in the same place. It's going to, because they just always go to take it to the very center and try to cover it up, but that's where they find the bodies too.
So alligators and crocodiles will do that.
Yes.
They will absolutely take somebody and do the death roll, and then they'll stuff them into the bank.
Yep.
And a lot of times, whenever they find when somebody goes missing in alligator or crocodile infested waters, they'll just start looking on the banks and they'll find them in a hole. Very, very scary stuff. So these exsanguinated people that they find in the middle of this in these waters, you guys, I mean, like how many, like where, like exactly, like is this? I mean, I don't even say specifically, but like where and what lakes? Like, I mean, to know to be careful around it or to not go there. Because I don't want to go there by accident either.
I'd say every lake, because there's
Wow.
cover-ups. Right now around Stubblefield Lake in East Texas, there's so many more missing people than what they are letting on. And War Chief can tell you about that. He talked to a deputy there. He's one of our trackers, War Chief is. And 43 people, I think is what he said.
43 people.
Crazy amount missing in that area.
Missing now, that's not being reported.
And right now, Georgia and
oh my gosh,
South Carolina area, there's a lake over there that's got a big rash of missing people. There's starting to be a lot more water, canoes tipping over, people just
not even
falling out of their chair in the boat.
Yeah.
Like that, or they go down and they don't come back up at all.
And I think also in
more and more.
Your area, Houston, there was a lot of bodies found in
Lake Travis.
Yeah, Austin.
Yeah, Austin.
Yes. Okay, so that's what I was going to say. Now we're getting into. There have been, what is it, 16?
Yep.
16. Now they're saying it was 12, which is, I don't know why they got that number from. It's kind of like this one guy. He goes, "You owe me $333." And it's a very specific number, and I'm like, for what? This guy really did that to me, and then I find out, well, he's a Mason. Of course, he's going to pick that number. You know? I mean, it's true. That's what he was doing. He's like, "You owe me $333 for 11 hours of work," and I'm like, I told Anthony, I was like, "It's a very random number, isn't it? Very random. It's not random."
And even the 11,
and also the 333. That's 3666 because those two threes at the end. He was throwing 666 at you.
Yeah, which was weird, and and my business partner at the time was like, "Just pay him," and I'm like, "No." Because I don't owe him, so I'm not going to pay him. But I pay my debts. But that was a weird thing. But it's very specific. And they said, "Well, there's been 12." So I was talking to my friend who owns a nightclub, and he's like, "That is a very random thing to just say 12 when we know there's been 4 more." And they said those other ones weren't connected.
And there's actually more in that lake. If somebody would go to that lake and go down there and look, there's going to be more. There's going to be more. Either shoes, watches, rings, something. There's going to be more there in the middle of that lake.
Were the others found or missing?
Well, there have been several people that have gone missing over the years. And since I've been here, you hear periodically somebody drowns and they usually find the bodies, but they say that there's no connection. And then they said, well, 4 of them were not connected, but they did. But here's the thing. They were, I'd say on YouTube, they were unalived. They were unalived in the same manner. So why would you not include this? So there's a lot of misinformation, and I'm sorry, but Austin is full of crap. I don't believe it. I don't think that this is correct. These people, they said the first one was this Arab guy who and they found him bound. He was tied and he was drowned. And they said that was the first one, but it goes further back than that. So I'm like, how could that be the first one? And then they were like, these other 4 weren't connected. And then they said none of them were connected. And I'm like, how much misinformation are you going to throw out there before you just say you don't know what the heck is going on? Or maybe you do, and you're just not interested in solving it.
Right.
And these people were from all walks of life, particularly male. And they were all of them had been downtown drinking, doing things, downtown. And somehow they ended up in the lake drowned. and it doesn't make any sense. And so they're pretty much, everybody's convinced that it is the work of a serial killer. Obviously, it's a serial killer. But here's the thing: the drowning method is bizarre. But we were working on a book. We're thinking about it. I've been putting stuff together for it because I'm trying to finish this other book. But I want to jump right into the next one, and it's about the dark side of music, the 27 Club, and Brian from the Beach Boys. What's his name? Brian Wilson. He was drowned, and what's really weird is he was drowned at a party in Los Angeles, in California. And there were multiple people around, and nobody saw anything. Like, nobody saw this guy being held underwater and drowning. Like, that is crazy. And then a couple people came forward, and then they said, well, we saw this strange man with his foot on what we think was on top of his head. Well, okay, obviously he drowned because somebody drowned him. Mm-hmm. Who did it? Well, we don't really remember what he looked like. And I'm like, how can all these people be at a party? Like 30 something, whatever it was, and so I haven't really got into a whole bunch yet, but I just kind of glossed over it. That doesn't make sense. And I know that there is a ritualistic drowning method that these people do. And I was talking to some people about it last night. We were actually at one of our job sites, and we were talking with these people, and they were talking about the drownings. And what were they saying? That there was a drowning method? It was like a ritual.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we were talking about it, and I'm sitting there going like, dude, I don't, somebody said not Brian, his brother. I thought it was Brian Wilson. Maybe it's his brother. I don't know. I thought it was Brian. But anyways.
Amy Winehouse and Whitney Houston also, it was bathtub with both of those, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. What is that? And somebody asked the question on here, what does it have to do with the water? What would you think it is, guys?
Well, with the Bigfoots, they're called water spirits. Mm-hmm. That's where they hunt. They're waiting. They're in the lakes right now. They're in the ponds. They're waiting. They're in the canals, the waterways, anything that has to do with. All animals need water. People go fishing. People go swimming, camping. So they're going to water. Everybody's going to water. That's the perfect place to set up a hunting area.
Yeah.
That's just demons. Yeah, that's just a hunting area. Water spirits, water demons, Bigfoot. Some of them have fins. Some of them have gills. Some of them have scales. Mm-hmm. They'll sit
we think of it like kind of like in a prison for the very violent people, or the place for the criminally insane. We wouldn't sort those all into different categories. We're just like, they're all predators. They're all part of the same mindset, the same basic DNA running through them, the same demonic entities running through them, the same spirit, the same wicked spirit of the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
They're adapted to their hunting area.
They're going to keep changing. About the time you think you got it sorted into this basket, here's another one that's just a little bit outside the loop. It continually mutates. None of it's original. It's all stolen DNA.
Some hunt in the water, some hunt on the land, some hunt in the air, some hunt in the mountains, some hunt in like Alaska, some hunt in the tropic areas, some hunt in the desert. They're everywhere.
Wherever they need to be.
And they've adapted to that area.
Yeah.
We had a guy come on a Monday nights. We have this call, not a call-in. I don't want to call it a call-in, but people can come on and tell their encounters. And we have so many people trying to give their encounters that we just said every Monday we're just going to open up the line and people can just jump in and start talking. And so that's what we do. And so we had a guy named Samuel Singh who came on, and he talked about a werewolf, a Dogman encounter, and then we started getting into the Bigfoot type creatures. And I told him, I said, one of those was a water spirit, like it's a water, whatever. And he was like, no, I forgot the name of it. God, my mind starts with an M. But anyways, it's from Guyana. It's from Guyana. which is there's a lot of African people there, but it was colonized, but it's in like South America. And in Guyana, they have these beliefs of this creature that's like a Bigfoot, but it lives in the water. It very much takes people in the water. And he was talking about, is this a Bigfoot type creature? I said, yeah, but it's still considered a water spirit.
Was it called a Masakura?
Yeah, it started with an M. Yeah, the Masakura. Yeah. And so I remember, because my friend's grandmother was from Guyana, and she talked about this creature that would hide in the water. And it would, even when it came up out of the water, it looked like a small wave. What are we looking at here?
This is a face like an alligator, but it's standing upright in the woods. It's got the
alligator snout.
Oh yeah,
short, but
just another mutation. But this one has, water features.
Yeah, and when you like when you hear these stories, my friend that used to rent a room from us years ago, his grandmother worked with me, and she was a very colorful person, and she said that she's like, I was a little child. She's like, and I was on the bank and I saw this like kind of ripple turn into a wave, and when it came up, it turned kind of into like an ape-like creature, and it was in the water, and it was of the water, but it turned into like a solid creature with fur, but it didn't last. It just kind of went and it turned into droplets of water. And so I remember her saying that, and I was like, that is crazy. It's similar to like what you would call like the water panther. There are different tribes that talk about, the Lakota have this for the water panther spirit, and this thing comes out of the water, grabs people. There's a giant wolf. The story that we covered in was it Lake Superior or Lake Michigan? It was Lake Superior, wasn't it?
Yeah, Superior.
Yeah. And it was like this guy's grandfather saw this giant wolf come up out of the water, but it was very much a wolf, and it came out of the depths, and it just like attacked the boat and then went back down. And I wonder about this because these creatures, they can be, like you said, in the air, they can be in the water, they can be in the woods, and they adapt, and it's all about the predator, DNA. It's all about that. It's the hunting and the killing.
Physical, they're spiritual beings too, so they can.
Well, that's what it is, and so they're like metaphysical, right? I mean, these things are like, you can't really describe them as saying like, well, they're a physical being, because they are pretty much spirit, and then they just manifest briefly, right? Is that what you guys would think? Or
some,
yeah,
but then others are always solid, but they still have a demonic spirit within them, but they can, just like with crypsis or camouflage, or how the hair has no medulla, they can stand in front of something and like a invisibility shield, and each little hair is like an invisibility shield, so they can,
the cloaking.
Yeah, and they can look like the heat wave on a hot highway. They can look like water, so how easily can they blend into water? They already look like water. They can look like fog. They can be a rolling fog and pull up into different, roll in as one group, but then pull up into 5 different, what appears to be 5 different, I've seen that.
And it's also people who
entities.
People who don't know this stuff, or has never seen this stuff, or has never been taught this. It's something hard for them to imagine. But even with our own bodies, we're physical, but we're a spiritual being. We're spiritual inside, and the physical's on the outside. And to be in this world, you have to be physical and have a spiritual. So every animal has it. They have it, even though they have an extra. They have a predator DNA mixed in with all that. But
people just have to expand their minds a whole lot further out than trying to fit every single thing into one box, one group, one category. It just doesn't work with these kind of things.
And the deeper you go into the story, it goes way, 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 way deeper. And even whenever these predators, when they kill somebody or just about to, every animal has that spirituality. We have it. And if we wanted to leave our body and pass, and go back, we can do that. We have that right to give up the body, or, these animals have that same ability. As far as a rabbit or something, they can leave their body if they don't want to be eaten alive. So a predator Bigfoot, and this is also in our new book also, where they will hold the head of its victim and look in that eye and wait for that awareness or that soul to leave and try to capture it in their eye. They're trying to transfer that awareness. And when they do, they can actually look like a apparition person or take that kind of look, because they've taken the awareness and they're using that.
The essence.
Can also use that through the blood. They can use that DNA to produce something else. So if they even eat a rabbit, they can use that DNA to produce a hybrid. But they don't have the ability to create. So they have to use the awareness or the DNA of something else to create something else.
Everything's mutation of
just
the
like a
original
spider.
Beautiful things that God made and said, this is good. I created the animals. This is good. I created the plants. These are good. I created man. This is good. But then when the arrival of evil came, everything became, not everything, but everything.
Yeah.
And they're just taking bits and pieces here and there and mixing it and making something else from the good to make something evil.
Corrupt.
Feed on just energy. Some feed on the blood, which is not only, blood is a spiritual thing, not just a physical
Powers
thing.
in the blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The creation,
Some
everything.
feed on just the flesh. There's every variation in between.
And there's stories of Bigfoots holding up people's faces, eye to eye. Moose, different animals. They're waiting for that awareness to pass out.
That's part of they're ripping the heads off too, popping the head.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's even a place called the Headless Valley.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There was a story that we got, was it Chattanooga? It was Chattanooga, Tennessee. Is it Chattanooga, Tennessee? I believe that's what it was. And this woman, she was an African-American woman, a black woman. I don't like saying African-American. It sounds weird, but she's a black woman. And she said, look, her grandson is a listener. So a shout out to Richie. Thank you for hooking me up with her. But it wasn't a real long encounter, but she talked about that. She said this Bigfoot grabbed her on top of her head and pulled her toward it when she was like 11 years old and stared into her eyes. Yeah. And she felt like it was trying to do something, like hypnotize her. And it literally, like the mind speak, but it wasn't with words. It was like images. Mm-hmm. And it told her, I'm going to eat your head. And I'm like, and she said it was the most terrifying thing she'd ever heard. And that she had literally passed out. She woke up and she said that her grandmother, of all things, her grandmother had come out and swung a raccoon trap at this thing and hit it in the back of the head. It didn't hurt it, the creature, but it startled it enough to where the aunt was able to grab her. And she woke up and she was like on the porch and they were all fanning her, trying to get her attention. What was weird though is that her aunt didn't see the creature. She didn't see it. She said that it just looked like a blurry something, but the grandmother saw it straight up. She called it a haint. The black people where I come from would call this Dogman creature the haint. Same thing. Yeah.
Like the blue that they would paint on the ceilings. People think it's just for bugs on the porch ceilings. They call it haint blue. Mm-hmm. To keep evil, wicked spirits away too, not just bugs. They actually ended up naming that color of blue, like the sky blue, haint blue.
And also thinking that wasn't a long encounter, but to that person, that was a long encounter.
Yeah, it wasn't a long, drawn-out story, but it was pretty intense.
And it sucked
energy. And it was trying to get her to give up the ghost, give up that, because it was threatening her and scaring her enough that most people say, I don't want to be eaten alive. I don't want my head eaten. I'm just going to leave before this happens. Mm-hmm. And was waiting for it to come out.
The fear and the energy that they feed on is some people call loosh, and that's also a name that some natives call Bigfoot. It's called loosh.
So I'm going to ask a very controversial question, and it may sound harsh to the people listening, but I want to know, because for me myself, and this is horrific. I don't even want to think about it, but hypothetically, let's say I'm out looking for stuff. I don't really look for stuff too much, but I do go on location to places. And we were out at Apache Pass, and my wife asked me this question. She's like, "What do we do if we find this?" And I was like, "I'm not prepared for that. I'm going to drive away as fast as I can. But if by chance we do see something, let's try to take a photo, whatever." And we were actually, because there were reports of this thing over there, and we were checking it out. It was my brother Anthony and my wife. That's who was. It was you, right? You and my brother.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we were all together. And my brother's like, well, I'll do this and do that. He's always talking crap. And I said, yeah, sure you will. I'm not going to sit up here and brag and say I'm going to do something crazy, because I don't, But hypothetically, let's say that one of these things grabs you. And this is a serious question. I'm being serious. It's not a joke for the people listening. But if it grabs you and you're let's say it's imminent. You're going, like, let's say you're gonna bite it. Okay, it happens. It really does. People don't believe it, but it does. And let's just say and it's looking you in the eye. And I'm asking you guys, should you just give up the ghost, or should you just let it do what it's going to do and not give up the ghost?
Never give up.
Never give up.
Never give up. The Lord will provide a way out, or he will take you. He will protect you, or he will take you. You never give up to them. Never.
Yeah. Don't surrender to them. But what about if you feel the pull from the Holy Spirit, and you know that? Well, then you go, right?
Snatch you.
But also, we prepare. We prepare before we go out.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that we do is put the armor on for God, and we also say our prayers before we go out to make sure we're safe and we return home. When we set our tent like that, we always come home. You set your tent, you let God know what you need and what you're going to do, and God will protect you and bring you back. So that won't even be a factor. But we also train by getting our trackers to know that you got to think of a 40-foot, 50-foot, vicious, snarling, long-clawed, drooling, red-eyed, bloody, just meanest, terrifying thing you can think of. And that's what we train them to think, so that when it does happen or it comes into that encounter, it's nothing as terrifying as what they could possibly imagine. So now, and we also say our goodbyes to each other. It's called the Warriors Talk. We tell each other, we reminisce, and we tell them how much we love them, so that thought is not in our head when we're out in the field, as far as saying, oh, I should have said this to them, or I should have, We need to be thinking on our feet. And we also carry our weapons, and we walk a certain way. So that would never happen to us unless we just ran out of ammo, our knife was broken, and we got caught somehow. But we've always got God, and we got to always hold on to that hope that God is going to get us through this. And God will,
our next
just like
book
that,
is called Vessels of Hope versus Agents of Darkness.
And just like that woman,
vessels of hope.
Just like that woman with that raccoon cage, that was a God thing.
Yeah.
That last second, bam. Something's going to happen.
It happens a lot. That
ahead of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you said, Jerry, that happens quite a bit. Like, and I call it Deus Ex Machina, or Deus Ex Machina, whatever you want to pronounce it. But that I tell people that all the time. Whenever someone gives me an encounter, obviously I tell them, obviously you're alive. You're telling me you're obviously, unless you're a spirit, and then they're like, I got a confession to make. I'm dead. And then you're like, oh, this turned weird real quick, weirder than I thought. But no, you're talking to somebody. And then I'm not going to tell you something. There have been a couple people who've told us that they've talked to victims of what was the guy? I don't want to say his name is James, but the one that gave us the story about the Bear King. He's good friends with Brad from the one that had the encounter out near the Devil's Backbone. Now, this was a bear-like entity they call the Bear King. And for me, I think it's one of the most terrifying creatures I've ever heard of. It's huge, it's big, and it's like bigger than most Bigfoot encounters, and it looks like a bear, but it's also a man. It's like a bear man. They call it the Bear King, and it's a legend that goes way back to the 1800s here in Central Texas. Multiple people have seen it. We've had a couple come on the show and talk about it. But this particular person, they had this encounter, and there was a spirit that came to the window, and their face was gone. Like part of their face was gone, but they were dressed. And it sounds kind of corny to say like a pioneer, but that's how he described it. It was like somebody that was there from like the 17 to 1800s. And they told them like, look, be careful of this creature. And this thing, it was stalking them on a spiritual level, but it obviously had unalived this man that was a ghost. So, I guess they could say if they're telling you an encounter, but anyway, most of the living people, 99.9% of the people that tell me living, I tell them, I'm like, you're alive, obviously. So something happened. God, intervened and just said, hey, you're not taking this child to do this. And I say child, most of them are adults, but that are telling me the stories, obviously, but it's not going to happen. It's like, not today. It's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. And I always ask them that question. Do you think that God saved you? 90% would be, yes, I do believe it was God. And then there's some that say, only a handful, but they've been like, well, there's like this energy that, and like, okay, whatever, because they don't recognize what it is because they're not saved. They're not Christian. I'm not trying to pick at anybody or anything, but they'll say things like that. Right. And I'll say, well, where do you think that energy comes from? I mean, obviously something saved you and you're alive today to talk about this horrible thing. Thing is in the event and the creature itself because God saved you. He spared you.
Yeah.
And there's no other way around that. So I'm of the opinion, and I've felt this way for years, that if I go out and do anything at all, that God's got my back. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
I'm not an evil person. I'm not an agent of chaos or evil. And you guys have met me in person. You've been around me. We ate dinner together, and we hung out. And Jerry didn't look at me and go, you have a very unsavory look about you. You will probably be eaten by a Bigfoot. And then,
we wouldn't have come back on here if we thought you were evil.
You thought I was a bad guy. I do have weird looking eyebrows. I've been told that they look very
You're mouthy, but you're not evil.
I'm kind of cocky. I do have that.
We also
Stone Cold Steve Austin of the paranormal.
We also train our trackers, and we want them to trust God so much that, like that situation you're talking about, if the Bigfoot had you by your head, standing, picking you up off the ground, got his mouth open wide enough to put your entire head into it, and is just about to close its mouth over your face or over your head, that you still trust God to that last possible moment. Something will happen. You got to keep that trust in God. Something will happen, even if it's that situation and it's that close, that last possible second that you think nothing's going to happen. You just keep that trust. Something will happen. Something will get you through that.
There is a man named Dmitri Duduman. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he was giving away Bibles, and I can't remember if it would maybe Russia, the Soviet Union, but anyway, back when it was very much illegal to do so, and he ended up in prison, and he was in solitary confinement, and while he was in there, he was in total darkness, and one of the things they do is open up a little door and let the rats come in and eat the prisoners, not the prisoners. So it was his turn. He knew about this happening. He heard the door open, and he heard the rats coming, and there was just a burst of light. And in the burst of light, which he said was an angel, the rats instantly were dead all around him. And it wasn't very long after that that he had a visitation from an angel that told him, we need you to keep, we're going to get you out. Basically, I'm paraphrasing, we're going to get you out of here, and you need to keep giving these Bibles out, getting them in people's hands. And he's like, they're onto me. They know me. They know exactly where I live. I'm not going to get away with it. And they're like, again, we're telling you, we're going to get you out of here. And give away the Bible.
You got to just be faithful. Have faith.
Yeah. And it wasn't too long before one of the guards came and told him, get out get out, because the prison warden had a heart attack, fell face down on Dudeman's open file on his desk. And they were like, it's enough, just go. And so he did get out of prison, and then he was giving away the Bibles. He would get them and pass them out, and the soldiers would come, how you doing today, dude? Dimitri, open up your trunk. And he said they would look in there, and it was like they couldn't even see, like the Bibles weren't visible.
Yeah.
If God wants to, he can make you invisible. He can make
that's awesome.
the Bible's invisible.
Walk by faith, not by sight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know how many times though people have told us that they've walked right by stuff. I mean, like it happens so often, and when you talk to people, you're shocked at some of the things they'll tell you. But I mean, sometimes people tell me something I really don't want to hear, and it's like, but you got to take the good with the bad. Sometimes people just need to vent, and I'm like, I'll listen, but they'll talk about, like, I walk right by this. My wife would walk by something and not see this. There was a guy telling me about sleep paralysis. I haven't really fleshed all the story out, but I'm not going to say it too much of it, but he was having sleep paralysis, and this shadow was holding him down, and his wife woke up, and they have a black lab, and she didn't even take a look at this. She could see it, but she thought it was the dog. So she goes in there and takes a shower, and the whole time he's being held down by this thing. He said for like several minutes. And then when she got out, he was aggravated with her. But I told him, I said, this thing blinded her. She was in that half awake, half asleep state, and you're very vulnerable. I coached boxing and MMA for years and years. I did, I would, help people and do stuff and show people things. And one of the things I always tell people, they would ask me, because when I did fight, I fought some of the same guys 2 or 3 times, and you're like, well, you just had their number. And I'm like, maybe not. But I never believed that it was just like a person. They always said, well, there's somebody bigger and badder than you. I'm sure there is. I mean, but you always look at it. You go into a fight just like you do when you play football or anything else. You don't think, I'm going to get injured. I'm going to get knocked out. That don't come into your mind, because if that comes into your mind, you're going to make it happen. Right. So when you go into these altercations or whatever, I would tell people that I train, I was like, fear. And I would look at them and I'd say, fear is the mind killer. I was totally quoting Doom. But these young kids, they didn't know what they were like. Wow, that's so profound. And I'm like, yeah, man. I just
made it up.
I just made that up, man. No. And then years later, they're like, you were just quoting Dune and Lord of the Rings. Why are you?
I got it from you.
You're just like, but the point is that I would tell these young people, I'd say, look, man, young men and women that were trying to learn whatever, they were coming up and stuff. And I would tell them, I've been at this a long time, and I would tell them there's a lot of different ways to win. But to me, it is not a person. If they beat you once, there's no foregone conclusion they're going to beat you again. You should have an upper hand the next time, because you know what they're about. You know their tricks. And I would tell people a lot of times they're going to do the same thing, at least in the beginning, because that's what worked before. Then you have to counter that, and then there's a chess match. But I tell people all the time, it's not a person. It's not a man or a woman. It's a time. I believe there is a time when you were absolutely at your weakest after a heavy meal. It's not the best time to go out and fight in the Cheddar's parking lot. I don't think that Cracker Barrel is the appropriate place to be throwing hands if you're just like, oh, I'm bloated.
Yeah,
you want to fight? Oh my gosh, don't hit me in the stomach.
You got to eat spinach for that. Everybody knows.
A pizza buffet is not the
or even at a bar if you're drinking.
Exactly. Yeah. If you were in bad, horrible, right? You will get your bell rung, and then you might not care too much but the next day you're going to be like, oh my gosh, what happened? So I tell people, I was like, being inebriated. Yeah. What you said, Jerry, being inebriated, or if you're just eating a heavy meal, or I tell people if you're ill, obviously. And then the other times are when you're about to go to sleep or you're about to wake up. Those are the times you're most vulnerable. So I told this gentleman, I said, look, I've heard this before. And he says, my wife did not pay attention. I said, women actually are more attentive when it comes to attention to detail than men are. Men are just like, it's the same. I don't know what, and women are like, no, it's not. You can see there's like 1/4 centimeter of a difference in this picture, and guys are just like, I don't see it, but women can tell, and they have an attention to detail. And he says, well, that's what I thought. I said, but you got to remember, she had just woke up. She had just waken up. She's going in there. She's bleary eyed. She kind of just barely looks over. She sees the lab. She doesn't see a shadow person because she's not expecting it. So she goes into the bathroom, takes a shower, and leaves you there. I'm sorry that it happened to you. I said, but you really shouldn't hold a grudge about it. And he said that you're right. It happens, simply happens. And, but that is the case. You're very vulnerable when you first wake up. That's why so many times people will see these entities. You're in that half awake. You're kind of in between worlds. And you're also very weak because you're not spiritual, you're not physical, you're kind of, and I think that's how they get you. And I can't tell you how many times people have told me, man, I drove right by this thing and I didn't see it there. Like I didn't see it. There was a guard at the mall that said he was smoking a cigarette with another guy. He's an Arabic guy. We know him. And he put his arm up like this. And I looked back and there was this, I just saw red dots. He was telling us, his name is Amar. And he said, I look and there's this black entity right there outside the restaurant where we like to go. And he said it was right there. And he goes, my friend was like, oh, and it was like, that's the creepy thing about this, that I compare them to spiders because spiders are quiet. Mm-hmm. I can't stand that because they're these ambush predators. So they don't make any noise. And you could put your hand on a wall or something and a brown recluse or a black widow could be right there. And you have no idea because it's deadly silent. It's not going to warn you that it's going to crawl on you. It's not going to make any noise or sound, and it's going to do what it does. And I don't like them at all. There are people that will have them in their house and be like, this is a pet and whatever. That's gross. That is.
Yes, we agree.
Yeah, we will kill a spider anyway.
Dude, if I see a spider bigger than this, I'm getting the flamethrower out. I'm going to tell you. I'm going to be like, well, it was a nice run. I left my house, but things had to happen. But I'm very guarded against it. I don't like them at all, and that's why I don't want bugs around because spiders will come when there's bugs.
Yeah.
You got to keep them out of your house, and I hate them. I can't stand them.
They'll wait there at the door for it to open. So that as soon as you open it, they're somewhere there around the
top
corner, just waiting for a chance to get in.
Yeah, and it's an insidious thing. And then you have these other bugs like wasps, who I think those and spiders I detest. I don't know which one I hate more, but wasps are not, they have their own like evil, supposedly they came from ants, that they originally came from ants and there were ants that fly, that is true. Yeah. And they're horrible. But they're quiet. That's the thing that I can't stand about spiders. And these demons are the same way. I mean, they are very quiet and they can be very stealthy. And this guy almost put his hand on one of them, and it was a demonic entity. And then it came off the wall and went, woof, and it scared the crap out of him. This guy's a security guard at the mall we go to. And he told us, he's like, dude, he goes, man, I almost touched it. It was so horrific. He goes, I felt something weird, like electrical, And he's like, and I turn to look and I'm like, whoa, and he sees it. And I tell him, I said, dude, these things can move around and you don't know how many times, and people talk about this with Bigfoot, that you walk by them all the time and you don't even see them there in the woods, or Dogman. It's right there. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, but you guys are pretty adept at like being able to spot them, but are there times when they're there, but you can't put your finger?
But can't see them, but you can feel them.
Well, I was just going to say that many people, getting their groceries out of the car, sometimes they'll prop their door open. They'll, get their, groceries and bring them in 2 or 3 times, but every time they go that way, that door is wide open. It's translucent, so just wait at the door and go inside and wait. Go underneath the bed, find a closet. So they're in their rooms waiting for people to go to sleep. And when people sleep, that's an open threshold if they don't pray over themselves before they go to bed, and if they dream. And dreaming is an open world. They just open themselves up, and these things will come in and feed on that dream, come in that open portal, that open threshold. So when people are sleeping, they're over their bodies. They're waiting for that dream to open that world up. And when it does, they can just feed. They can get them to have any kind of dream to cause energy to be released.
Mhm.
Doesn't even have to be a bad dream. It could be an enticing dream, but it's
Mm.
pulling energy from you. It's drawing you further into that world. You know.
I was also going to say back on the trust with God that as far as the trackers, that we have to trust enough or so much that we don't question anymore. We
Yeah.
don't doubt anymore, because there's so many
Good
times
point.
in the Bible that Jesus starts off the chapter with, again, I say to you, again, because he already told them what they need to know, but
He's reiterating it. Yeah.
question, like, well, what about this? It's like, again, I'm saying this.
It was
It's like,
very clear.
yeah,
It's pretty aggravated with the disciples too, because they're like, "What of our wives?" And he's like, "Yes, I'm going to tell you again. It's not going to be the same way in heaven. That's not." Then I tell my Muslim and Christian friends that, and they've tried to tell me, well, when heaven, you go to heaven, you'll have all this. You have chocolate cake and mountains of cookies, and I'm like, dude, that's all earthly stuff. You're not going to care or want for those things.
yeah.
Yeah, when you pass on, you're in the presence of God. The last thing I'm going to care about is chocolate cake or whatever that's earthly desires. I'm not going to have any
Well,
desire.
things that give you, even though we love it, we just had some birthday cake tonight, but you don't.
Yeah.
In heaven, you're not going to want the things that are.
Because you're not in that realm, you're not in that body. You're going to be thinking of other things. I mean, you've transcended, and you're like, well, I'll take some chocolate cake, and you're like, St. Peter's like, we don't have that here. This is heaven. You don't need those things. You're not going to want that. So Jesus does. He says that. He gets kind of aggravated with them because they keep saying things, and you know what it is. Their mind is in the physical world, and he's trying to stress that this is a spiritual thing.
Yes.
And you are going to face principalities in high places, and you're going to have to. This is a spiritual war, and they're just still kind of like in the physical. And it is one of the hardest things that I've had to do is try to make people understand the spirituality and the actual the nature of reality. And I think, I'm not saying this just because you're my guest. I mean, I've had lots of guests, but I think that you guys are the closest to what y'all get it. You understand? And having, talked to you guys in person, and we do have an understanding of the world and how it works. And it is not the way people, well, I don't want to say that people think it is, that people want it to be. We love for things to be great and for Bigfoot to come out and be like Harry and the Hendersons, hey guys, and you give them some beef jerky and it's all good, but that's not the reality. That is not the reality at all. If you were to do that, you're opening yourself up because you're giving supplication to something that is not
That's exactly
you. It's not part of you. And in fact, it is born and bred and raised to hate you. It is the Nephilim, and somebody had asked earlier that question. I wanted you, Jerry and Ella, to answer what you think what is the connection between the Nephilim and I think they said the spider. What is the connection between those two? That's pretty.
Even when the Nephilim died, these spiders fed on them, and they also took that DNA, and they also produced a hybrid Nephilim. And
I'm sorry.
So that there are hybrid Nephilims and there's regular Nephilims, but that bloodline is still here, and it's also mixed with predator DNA. So now you got a Bigfoot that's still Nephilim, it's predator, it's man, it's all these animals together. So it has that bloodline in it. It's
there's been more than one incursion. There's been more than one wicked, evil predator to come here. And when you look at the descriptions even of the hosts of heaven, they're not pretty. When you read those descriptions, some have multiple faces,
multiple eyes, multiple arms.
multiple eyes, and they weren't meant for here on this earth. They weren't supposed to be here. They weren't supposed to leave their first estate and come down here. People like to draw the angels to look
human
and beautiful, but maybe they have the ability to appear that way, and in some cases they do, but that's more an illusion than what they are. They're terrifying. For one thing, how many times does the angel say, "Don't be afraid"?
Yeah.
Why would you say
angels.
that? Yeah. unless you're scary looking.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know what you guys think of this, but you know, there is something to this Nephilim thing where they look like they have this white face and it's pale and you know, and these people, they do these dances and these rituals and they're like, well, they're imitating their ancestors.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, yeah, but their ancestors is in like my great grandfather, and even if you take my Comanche side, you know, like okay, my grandmother and her dad would have been, you know, a full-blooded Comanche. Like, okay, he wasn't wearing a white face because that's not his ancestors. They look, well, let's take a look at Anthony. They look more like him than they did me because my dad's white. But that right there, they don't look like that. That when they're imitating their ancestors, they're talking about people that are beings that came from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And they look clownish. I'm not even going to say I'm joking. I'm being serious. Like the Arapaho in the Wind River Reservation, we were talking about the casino, the ghost. They said it's a ghost. I don't think it's a ghost. I think it's a clown-looking Nephilim. And I think that the whole thing with it, I think that's like a soft close.
Yeah. And at that movie, what's the last thing that they find?
It's a spider, a cosmic spider.
And then you even think about just the words that we use around us now, the World Wide Web, just all the references to spiders and even the original column.
The net. Yeah, exactly. So let me ask you this, guys. Now I got you on here because here's another one. Okay, so I've been given stories of people telling me that they have, and even remote viewers, former military remote viewer told me this. And he said that, well, he's one of the people, but let's just go with him. That he remote viewed these crystal caves and that these spiders live deep within the earth and they are giant. Like I'm talking huge. Like some of them are the size of like a small city.
Yeah.
Is that real to you guys? Do you think that's real?
Yeah. And also those are small.
Wow.
You know, to like the cosmic.
Oh, God, it's freaking terrifying. Oh boy.
Spider is bigger than this world.
Yeah.
And it's just got a piercing that's holding it. And the deeper the story goes is that we're inside the moon. And we can see through the moon because it's a spiritual being. The moon is the mother and the earth is the unborn child. So we can see the reflection of the sun off of the abyss or the dark waters. So we're seeing a reflection from the sun, but the sun is still getting to us. But the cosmic spider is big enough to hold the moon. And the moon is bigger than the earth. I know how science is trying to confuse everybody about that, but we're inside the moon and we're what we are the dream of the dreamer. We are the thoughts of the cosmic baby earth.
Yeah.
And the earth is the earth is our umbilical cord. It feeds us, it gives us water, it gives us plants, everything we need. So we're just the dream of the dreamer because the baby's not born yet.
Yeah.
And it even talks in the Bible about the earth will rock to and fro, back and forth like a woman in great travail. And there's a lot of references.
And in Revelations, because the spider is trying to kill the moon, and when that, it's not going to happen because we know about it. We send prayers to have the moon to stay strong until the baby's born, until everything can be set back right. But that piercing, if they can rip the piercing open and get to the baby, you know, in the Bible it says that when the moon turns blood red, earth is next, which is cutting the baby, the womb open or the belly, and getting to the baby, which is earth.
And there's going to be a new heaven and a new earth.
Yeah. So there are a lot of different ways to interpret it, but I mean, like, it is so, like, when it comes to the creation stories, they're all very similar. And I've always thought, and this is going to sound weird to some people, but I always believed that oil was like the earth's blood.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is. And I really believe that. And I do. And I'm going to say something else too. I think it could be renewable.
That's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, renewable, because everybody's like, well, we're going to run out of it. No, you won't, unless you're bleeding to death, because it is the blood of the earth.
Mm-hmm. And you can also just filter with water, and the oil will still be good. And you just keep filtering with water, and you have renewable oil that way. Because although when you put it with water, the oil will go to the bottom, and all those contaminants will rise to the top. And the water, you just dump that out, do that again, and it'll do the same thing. Next thing you know, you still got good oil.
If you were to stop and look at this, like, I read a book years ago called The Smoky God, and it is about the inner earth, and it's about their sun inside the earth, which would actually be, according to the Choctaw belief, that would be the outside, right? You'd be inside the earth, you'd be looking on the outside, right? Is that correct?
Well, we're inside the earth as a dream, so we're not really here.
Yeah.
And so what we're think that physical and everything is not really real.
Yeah. We're like microorganisms living on a
yeah.
We're like pests, really. I mean, I've often thought
healthy. There are the hybrids and the humans, those are like the pests and the parasites.
Yeah.
We're like the good organisms that are helping the earth.
Yeah, I've thought, though, sometimes some of the people are really unhealthy. I thought maybe, bad bacteria, but it could be those people that are not really people. I've said this before. And I like at night, and I got to do it tonight, like always, I got to go out and do my patrol. And I promise you, I have encountered people. These are not people. I'm not even joking. And it's not an excuse to go and commit violence or anything like that. I've been accused of that. Oh, you just want to hurt somebody. I don't want to hurt somebody, but those aren't somebodies. Well, they are, but they're not. These aren't people. I'm not even joking, dude. We were driving. How many times have we been out there on patrol, Anthony, and we've seen people staggering around the street, and you're just like, look at that. That is not a human being.
Yeah.
There was a guy who his arms were down to down to his ankles or something. And I was with Nellie and Anthony. I said, did y'all see that? And they were just like, yeah. And it was like
cartoon character,
like some kind of cartoon. And then he had like a hat, it looked like a cowboy kind of, and he had weird shorts, and it was like he was dressed like not correct. Like he was
urban
like
camouflage.
Yes. He's like, I am a human.
Yeah.
He's just like, dude, this is not a person. I'm not trying to be funny, but it's so, I guess I laugh because I'm not laughing at, I'm just, because I don't know how to react.
Get it.
And I'm just like, glad I'm not walking around, because I've had people tell me they've walked around and they've ran into weird stuff.
And on top of all those unnatural mutations, then there's also what's been created in the labs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to bring that up. It's just like there's so much of it we got to deal with.
And Bigfoots, they use
their assets,
the hoodies, the big duster jackets, and
we've shown
to
you
get
that
into the
picture,
towns and
the Bigfoot hoodie.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
In the cities.
Oh yeah. In the sewers.
That's so creepy. And these reptilians, I mean, and now they're like, if you talk about the reptilians, they're like, they're fictional. Blah, 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 blah. Why do you got to tell us on a disclaimer that they're fictional? If they're fictional, we know they're fictional. You don't have to tell us, like,
if it's such a crazy idea, why do you have to keep telling people that they're fake?
So this character is SpongeBob, right? So if I talk about SpongeBob, you're not going to go, oh, by the way, SpongeBob's fictional. Like, really? Like,
disclaimer: SpongeBob is a fictional cartoon character, not to be taken seriously.
Mr. Krabs is really not his boss.
Yeah,
this is not a real thing. No, duh.
No.
There's no empirical proof of a pineapple under the sea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also the Nephilim, the reptilians, those are the people who own the cable companies, the internet. They're the ones giving the news. They're the ones, because they can hypnotize people. Just like
programming.
Yeah.
Your regularly scheduled programming.
So we have this snake now, and of course the Vikings had the idea too. It's weird how the Vikings legends mirror the Native American legends so similar. They're almost like the same thing. A lot of them are very similar. But you're talking about tribal people and what it's closer to the root of back when this stuff all went down. So the further back you go, the more they're going to know and remember in the before time. And they talk about Jormungandr. Jormungandr was the one who kills Thor in the Ragnarok. Somebody asked me about Ragnarok. Now they said, "What do you think of the myths of Ragnarok?" And then and somebody was talking in another group about the myths of the Choctaw legend. I said, first, I'm going to stop you. I said, with all due respect, these aren't myths to me. I believe these are explanations from past civilizations, and they were correct. Mm-hmm. And so they said, well, how can this is what this person told me. And it's actually a woman. She was very polite when I said her name was Ruth. I'll just say that, and she was polite. Not Ruth. Truth said something. And I said, let me tell you something, Truth. I was like, and it's a woman because I said sir, and she was like, I'm not a sir. I'm a woman. I said, well, your name is Truth. Okay, so I don't know what to call you. And so I said, Truth, you need to understand something. And I wasn't trying to be rude, but I said, your name on your handle implies that you want to know the truth, right? So you keep saying these are myths. These are myths. And I said, I don't believe that Jormungandr is a myth. She says, then what happened to him? I said, he died. She says, how? I said, Thor killed him. She's like, in a cartoon, like jokingly. And I said, Truth, you're being very rude. And turned out I did talking to her and finding out her name. She watched a couple episodes as it wasn't for her. Okay, fine, whatever. But the point is this. These are not myths. This really happened. And I said, this was the death of one Earth years ago. I do believe that there was a Thor. Just my opinion. And Thursday is actually named for him. Funny how somebody who wants to call themselves the Truth, they don't want to hear it. So that's kind of like the world where it's like inverted, it really is. And so I told her, I said, it's funny because you use that moniker as you're the Truth, and you're not wanting to hear it, Truth. This is my problem. If you look at Ragnarok, that was the twilight of the gods. That was the end of what these people, and I believe they were the mighty men of renown. And I do believe that he had a dad, and his name was Odin. And they did live in an in-between state because that's what they were. They were part angel, part human. And some of them were evil, some of them were good, some of them didn't care. They were just ambivalent, they didn't care, whatever. But this being, he fought, and he always fought against what they called the ogres. The ogres were mismatched, chimeric beings that had mixed with human DNA, and he was always defending humans against them. And he was considered to be a giant, and they were giants, and he would fight them. One of the myths is very interesting, and I believe it was the Danish myth, I think. Don't quote me. It might have been the Icelandic sagas, but I think it was the Danish. And one of these ogres tried to trick Thor, and guess where he tried to take him? To the middle of the lake. And he wore a hood, and he pretended to be a human, and he said, there's trouble. We got to go to the middle of the lake. There's someone in trouble. So Thor gets in the boat, and he rows him out there. But Thor already knows. Thor's like, I know this is an ogre in a hood. And so he smacks him upside the head with his hammer, and then he jumps into the water. And, of course, there is Jormungandr trying to come up, and Thor fights him down, back, whatever, and gets back into the boat and rows back to shore. Jormungandr ends up eating the ogre and goes back to his place. Thor is told over and over again, you are going to fight Jormungandr. You will defeat him, but you will die. Now, he knows this is going to happen. So when the day comes, he actually does go out, and he takes his hammer, and he faces Jormungandr, and he defeats him, but he dies of his wounds. And then Surtur, opportunistic, it's not a concentrated pincer movement. They're not working together. Fenrir and his sons are doing what they're doing. They're eating the moon. They're trying to kill and eat the moon. Because Fenrir been chasing the moon, right? And then Odin rides out to face Fenrir and stop him. He ends up dying. He manages to drive him away, but he dies. In some versions, it's like a stalemate, and then Surtur lights everything on fire because he's like, now's my chance. He comes above, and he just wipes everything out. But he doesn't destroy everything, but the fire purifies and cleanses the earth, ironically. Even though Surtur was trying to turn everything to ash to destroy it, he ends up cleansing the earth of all these evil beings, these ogres and everything else. And so that was one incarnation. And then at the end, there was only one thing left, and it was a tree. and below that tree was a wolf pup, and then it grows and becomes, whatever. It's the next generation of beasts or animals or whatever. And so this happens over and over and over again. And that is kind of what has happened, like, whether it's allegorical or it's real, metaphorical, whatever you want to say, this is what happens over and over again. And these creation myths, and I told her, I said, this isn't a myth. The Choctaw creation story, that's why I call it a story, because that's what it is. I don't believe it's a myth. I think that there's a lot of truth to these things. And everybody argues. They say, well, I'm Muslim, I'm Jewish, I'm Christian, I'm Buddhist, I'm Hindu. We all have the truth. Everybody has a bit of it, but they don't have all of it. And they don't understand when someone tells their version of it, that it's just as real and true as anything else. It's just their version of the beginning. But I have always had this weird belief, and even when I was a child, nobody told me. And then people have chastised me over the years that that's not correct. I always thought the spider was evil. I always thought it was a villain. I always thought that. I mean, ever since I was a child, I'm like, spiders are evil. They're just not, they're not good.
There's a reason for that.
And when you look at the Black Widow, Anthony, we talked about this. Look, there are no straight lines in nature. How did you get two pyramids facing each other? How does that happen in nature? It doesn't. Something created that thing, genetically modified it, created it with that amount of poison to kill things. And it's the black and red marking basically connotating, hey, this is poisonous, this is bad, I'm a bad thing. How is that even possible?
It was engineered.
It was engineered. Yeah.
And these stories were written or orally given by people who didn't have a Bible written. This was how they explained what they saw and what they experienced and what their ancestors experienced.
And like the Bible of today, or even the first Bible, was a Coptic Bible, but also like with the stories in the Bible, it doesn't have the Indians in it, because that's talking about this part of the world, not this part of the world. And like the Americas, we still had the fresh water, green grass, trees, plants, berries, animals. But on this side of the world, they had rocks, sand, seas, salty waters.
Struggling.
There was nothing over on this side because the flood covered that side of the world. It did cover over here too, and we're all in the mountains. There's still cities on the bottom of the ocean. But on this side, we were already in the mountain areas, so it didn't affect us. So when people came over here, it was called a new world. It's like, hey, there's trees, there's grass, there's fish, there's birds, there's everything here. And then but if you look at this side of the world, you see sand and rocks and turmoil. And so Jesus had to go over there and help the people there. But over here, we said Creator because Creator had, still kept us safe and had everything, had left everything. So we didn't know the word God until the Bible and people came over. So this side wasn't affected like that side was. So we wrote things down, but we got to see these floods. We've seen these things coming out of the sky. We've seen things landing in other areas. So we told what we've seen, but we didn't write it in like a Bible. We just, like the Aztecs, they put it on the Aztec sunstone, and that the Bigfoot DNA and the cross mixture of the animals is in there. But if you look at the Egyptian Dendra Zodiac, which is on that side of the world, it talks, the first thing it shows is the appendage. Then it shows the serpent. Then it shows the ram. Then it shows the bird. Then it shows the fish. And those are all hybrid mixtures with people, fish people, bird people with wings, serpent, people with tails.
Yeah.
And that's how it starts off. And that's showing the DNA of the spider and mixing DNAs together to make serpent or people with tails. And And the reason it goes like that is because when that flood happened, the rams, I mean, it came through the serpent DNA first and came through to here. And when it landed here and caused a flood, the reason the ram is the next hieroglyph is because the rams were in the mountains already. And so the spiders were eating the rams, the dead people who were being washed up, and it still had that serpent DNA. So the first hieroglyph is a person with a tail. And then the second hieroglyph is one with a small ram. And the next one is a red person with a tail, which is the red ram and the serpent mix, but it's also a predator. And so when the birds started flying back looking for places to land, and so they landed on the top of the mountains and the spiders ate them. So next hieroglyph, you've got a person with wings. And so when that food supply was done, they went into the water. So the next hieroglyph, you got a person with scales, carrying or alligator looking people. And yeah, so it's a story. It's the same story told in different parts of the world just by what they had at that time.
And that's very interesting that like the snake or serpent, you would say, that came directly after the spider?
No, there was a war, like in the Prayer to Bigfoot and Spiritual Warrior's Path, and the story, the legend of time, it talks about the spider biting the cosmic animals, because in the sky you got the Ursa Minor and Ursa Major, what we call the Great Bear. You got Orion's Belt, but we call that the Great Turtle. Then there's the Milky Way, but we call that the Great Serpent. So all these animal planets were being attacked at the same time. It was like the spiders just, after they got that blood, they started going planet to planet, animal to animal. But the one that was above us, which is the Milky Way, that's the Great Serpent, who in the creation story had a fight or a battle with a huge spider. And after being bit so many times, it was subdued and it was paralyzed. And then that's when we seen the first appendage come over. And then we seen another appendage, which we'd never seen before. And then the face came over with multiple eyes. And then that's whenever it pierced. But it already had that DNA of the serpent because it was ingesting it. And when those three came through, which people call those the three comets in history, but when those three dropped through, they had already been feeding on the Great Serpent. So they're carrying that serpent DNA with them. And when they get here and land, they start eating people and animals, whatever they can get. So that mixture started happening there. And then it just on the hieroglyph, it just shows that whole process of every animal that it eaten and the mixture of people in there also.
And when you've studied this stuff, you have actually gone to different places in the world and uncovered a lot of this, right?
Yeah, I went to a lot of different tribes. I talked to a lot of different elders, from Canada to Honduras. Talked to people from Hawaii, all the people who still had the information. And it was people who wouldn't talk to just normal people.
Yeah.
And so I had access to all that. I talked to international advisors who had this information that they've been studying for, all the old books, people who could read hieroglyphs, people who could read sky maps. I used to have meetings sitting around tables with maybe 10 different people who this person was, I would say, an expert or a master in herbs and medicines. And this one had knowledge on hieroglyphs. This one had knowledges on different languages. This one had knowledge on reading symbols. This person had knowledge on the alphabet, the numerology. So I would sit around and share with them, but something for me is I could put it all together real quickly. And I would say, well, that goes here and this goes here. It's like a puzzle. And they would show me a map. And I said, what do you think this is? I said, well, this is a map. You just got to know how to read. You got to fold it in half and turn it backwards. Or you got to use a mirror on certain parts. because it's a reflection. And I said that you have to read all these maps upside down and backwards because of the legend of time is like a key also. And if you know that story, you can put all these other symbols, what do you call these, like the Aztec Sunstone and all that. You can put all of them together, but you have to read it upside down and backwards. Like they showed me the sky map, and I picked it up. I said, well, I put it up to the sky, and I turned it around. I said, this is how we got to read it. And they've never done that before, but then it started making perfect sense because now we can see how everything's lined up, but it's backwards and it's upside down. So it should be read this way in the beginning, but now we have to read it this way. So, yeah, I got to talk to, and a lot of people's passed now, so all this knowledge that we share with everybody now because we want everybody to know all the correct information because there's so many people out there who are like the Bigfoot saying gifted, talk to it, whatever. But if you don't know that this is a predator that just, once it picks you, you may be safe around 100 of them because that one has called dibs on you. It's saying that's mine. That one's mine. Leave it alone. But if that Bigfoot ever gets killed or goes out of the territory, those people who think they're safe are fair game again. And these other ones have been craving that blood and waiting for them. So if that one who's picked that person, but also even then the one that picks that person, there's also a bigger one. And if that bigger one wants that person, it's not going to stand in the way. It's because they'll get eaten too because they are cannibals. So it'll eat that one and it'll eat that person. So nobody's actually safe. And if they're gifted, that means they're getting closer to these things.
Giving a scent
to
homage
themselves.
to them.
Yeah.
They've entered a mating ritual with them.
So all this history that we've been taught by, I couldn't tell you how many people who had bits and pieces of that information. And that's kind of like whenever I talked to my mom, because I was going and doing some traveling, and I said, I got to go out. I'm leaving again. And she said, why do you have to go? And I said, well, if you can tell me everything I need to know about this world, I can stay. And she looked at me for a little bit. She shook, she just looked at me and said, well, I'll see you when you get back. And so I would come back with Egyptian information, African information, information about the temples. I talked to what they call tatas, which are priests. But these are people who have the knowledges hidden in temples all the way to Honduras. Different symbols. They were teaching me how to read these things, what the colors meant, the directions, how this lines up with the sky and the stories that go with it. I can go to almost any place and decipher anything just by all that knowledge that was given to me.
And it's the same patterns over and over.
Yeah, it's the same patterns.
Yeah, I've learned that too. I've come across this many times. It just seems like a repeating cycle. And the cycles repeat, and then they wash, rinse, repeat, and then they all repeat again in a different era, but the same cycles. It's definitely a wheel. It just kind of keeps turning. And in what you said earlier, one of you guys, I think it was Ella, or said something about how there were different. Was it you or I don't know which one of you guys, but said that there were different incarnations and different invasions, if you will, things that came here. And I've said this before on the show. For millions and millions of years, we've been inundated with different species of like alien, demonic, whatever. I had somebody argue with me. Now, of course, like I said before, this is probably not important. You shouldn't argue with people on Facebook. It's a stupid thing to do, but I do it anyway because I'm in there and I'm trying to get stories on this. And I say, hey, do you want to tell a story? And most of the time it's okay, but then sometimes people get weird and they'll message me and say all kinds of crazy stuff. Well, one of them did, and they were just like, well, I know who you are, and I know your stories. That you talk about all this, and for the most part, I agree, but I don't agree with your history. And I told them, I was like, what do you mean? Well, your history is not correct. And they started telling me how the world was only 10. This was a weird number too. 10,190 years old. Like, where do you get that number from? That just pluck a number out of the air and let's do that. Let's say that that's how long the Earth. So I said, okay, that's a random number, but why would you say that? And he went on to ramble on. Well, I've done all these calculations and blah, 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 blah. And I said, that's not even a blink of an eye of how long this has been going on. Mm-hmm. Because for us, you know, it's time. The smaller the further you go into the quantum verse, the slower, you know, or the faster, I should say, time goes. Insects, there are insects that'll live one day. They'll just live and die one day, and it's a whole lifetime for them. We are like bugs. We just live and die, and it's like a gnat. But our ancestors, who were giants and lived a long, long time, and it's happened over and over again with these patterns. But it's not necessarily on this particular timeline. What I mean is you have all these different eras and then they end and then all the eras begin again, like it starts back up. And you have different incarnations and different species and beings that come and go, come and go, come and go. And some of them live for a long, long time and then they die out. But even if one civilization or one particular species, I should say, lives for like 1 million years, that's still not that long when you're talking about 2 billion years of Earth history. But even more shocking that the universe is 12 billion years old. Now, a lot of people would say, well, they don't really know. That's just a number. But if you're going by the calculations, that is a very possibly accurate, you know, standpoint. I do believe that could be, yeah, I mean, it could be 12, starting point. That should be 12 billion years would be about right. And we are only 2 billion. That's not very long. But if the Earth is like a baby, which it would be to the universe, right? The mother or father would be, you know, probably that. It'd be billions of years older. And so if there is something as above is below, you know, if there is a spider or a snake or something in this world, it would be in the cosmos too. That makes sense to me. And a lot of people say that doesn't make any sense, but to me it does. Mm-hmm. It just does, because why wouldn't it? Because these things would come and go and they would inhabit our world and that we share. But they also take part in the matrix that we're in. It takes part in it, you know, and then it becomes a part of it and then it goes and it comes back. There's like an ebb and flow. But I do believe that we have been inundated or invaded multiple times, and war has come and gone to this earth with multiple species. And reptilians, multiple different, just talking about them for a moment, there's so many different types that have come and gone on the earth, and they've come and gone. And there's like several different kinds that live within the earth. They're not all the same. They're not. And then some of them have become part of the parasite, the vampire parasite, which is what I talk about in the next book. And I believe that they have themselves been parasitized as they were doing others. It happens often. And I do believe that blood drinking, that sucking of fluids or whatever, that does come from a spider. That would just make sense, like this most primordial thing. And I was watching a show years and years ago. It was like The Future is Wild. I remember the name. It was like Discovery. Does anybody remember that? If you do, say yes in the comments. If not, be quiet. I'm joking. But no, there was this, and it talks about in the end, for us, we're all gone, and mammals go back to being these little small rat-like things that we were years ago, supposedly, allegedly, and that we become food for spiders. And that the whole future is just basically spiders eating mammals. And I can't help but think that that's somebody's giddy little fantasy that they want to come true.
Yeah.
That's sick. And I'm like, why would you even say that? But there was a whole thing about it on Discovery Channel, and I got really aggravated. And I was like, more reasons to hate these bastards already. I don't like them. But now they're going to kill and eat, you know, whatever's left of, you know. And it doesn't matter, because somebody made the comment in a group, like I was saying, and they said, well, spiders are going to inherit the earth, right? And I said, hopefully not. Okay. And they said, but they are. And they said that it was even on Discovery Channel. Like that's the be all end all, whatever.
They wouldn't lie on TV.
They wouldn't lie on TV, and they said we're all going to be eaten by them. But then someone said something, open mouth, insert foot, and they said, "Well, then what are they going to eat?" And I'm like, "Each other. They're cannibals. They don't care.
You go.
The bigger ones will eat the smaller ones until there's nothing left, and they cannibalize themselves, and that's it." Because to me, and nobody's going to convince me otherwise. There are always people saying, "Well, spiders are okay. They live in your house and all this other stuff." Hopefully not in my house, because they'll be hit by a shoe.
Yeah.
I don't want them around. And if they bite your pets or you could be in big trouble. And I'm going to say this. Every spider on earth, I will reiterate this, every spider on earth is venomous. They said, well, they're not poisonous. Poisonous, okay? The operative word, venomous. Yes, because every one that bites you, I don't care what kind it is, will create a whelp. It will create a big crater or whatever. It'll eventually heal if it's not a recluse that's necrotoxin. Necro is a necrotic. It will rot. Neurotoxin is another type of toxin that they produce. You don't want to be bit by one of those. And then, of course, there is the phytotoxin, which is I believe the black widow. It's similar to the rattlesnake. Now, get this. Black widow venom is very similar to rattlesnake venom. It's true. And why is that? That's a weird thing, right? But this phytotoxin is actually, I think, 22 times. I believe it's 22 times, unless the Mandela effect is messing with us, which it probably is, but 22 times more potent than rattlesnake venom. But thank goodness it's a small creature that doesn't produce enough to hit you. The rattlesnake produces a lot more. So bam, bam. But it doesn't need a lot to do it. And then the Sydney funnel web. You look at this creature, it is a little bastard from hell. It's about that big. It's not the biggest tarantula, but it is a bad SOB. And if it bites you, it has enough venom to kill like 40 people. And they said, well, this must have been a genetic mistake. I'm like, yeah, right. This is not a mistake. The whole thing was a mistake.
A hell of a mistake.
And that's the thing. Mm-hmm. And I think that these things are here for a reason. And then their relations. Now, going back to what you said, Jerry, about the salt water. This is something very important. This is something very, very important. He's talking about how they created that salination of the water. Guess who the ancestor of these arthropods is? Guess.
Squids and octopi.
No, those are arthrocephalopods you're thinking of. Probably the scuttlefish is what you're referring to. What I'm talking about is, oh, thank goodness that's our neighbors. I saw a light and I was like, come on, man. No, what I'm talking about is this sea scorpion that people like to eat, the lobster, a crab, crustaceans. They have 8 legs. They're very similar. The lobster is basically the water version of a scorpion.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, this scorpion from the ocean is delicious.
And the crab is a sea spider.
The crab is a spider. And so you're eating these things and you're like, these
Bible tells us not to eat them.
You're not supposed to, yeah. And then you eat it, and then they're like, these are delicious. This spider meat is tangy and juicy. And I'm thinking, you're eating a water bug. Like,
and then it's scorpion-like creatures that come out of the pit, bottomless pit, at the end of this time.
Yeah.
Scorpion is a spider.
It is. It's arachnid.
All versions of the same thing.
And also in the Aztec Sunstone, one of the main presenters, his name is Masatsan. I can't think of his last name, but he teaches the Aztec Sunstone, and he pointed at one part of the Aztec when he was talking about it, that he said, we're at this time, which is almost at the last part of the Aztec Sunstone. But underneath it, he couldn't read what I was showing him. And I said, right here, it shows that it's the predator human, and it's got a man here who's spiritual, and they're supposed to meet at the end for the last man standing. And the last man standing has to have all the knowledge and to trust God. But the predator man is going to try to overtake the world or overtake the man. But he can't do that spiritually. He don't mind physical battle, but he can't win in a spiritual battle because he's going against God. And that last man standing has has God with him and trusts God, then it'll revert back to the way it's supposed to. But if he doubts God and that this predator is bigger and stronger and will eat him, then if the predator wins, then, but it's showing also that the predators are eating everything, which they are doing right now. Food supplies are disappearing all over the earth. But if, when it comes down to it, that they will be released to eat everybody on earth, and it's going to come down to one man, and it could be that first man. If that first man withstands, that predator, that's like looking at that Dogman face to face, that 20-foot one that's got you by the head or whatever. You keep that faith, we win. The battle's already won, but now it's like you're going against God's creation. God's already won, but now it's the man who he put here to have dominion over. But if that man doesn't keep his dominion by keeping trust in God, then we can be overcome. And then that's when all the predators eat each other, eat everything on earth. And then when there's no more man DNA, then it reverts back to animals, and then it reverts back to the serpent, then it reverts back to the spider, and then the spider eats each other until the last spider, and then the spider dies, and that's when everything's supposed to disappear after that.
Everything disappears on our world, or just in the cosmos, or like elaborate on that a little bit, Jerry.
The earth is destroyed. The baby dies. There's no spirituality. It's like the earth has given us this time to collect all the information for this last stand. But if the baby was supposed to have been born at December 21, 2012, in mine, that's when that birth was supposed to happen, but that appendage is still in the baby's eye, in the left eye. So it's still in place. It can't be birthed because it's holding the baby in place. So there's no coming down the birth canal to be born. So it's still, now the earth is in turmoil right now. So if the baby was born at that time, if there was no spider there, this place would go back to natural, go back to fresh waters, no predators, no bad human people, no bad birds, no bad animals. It would be the garden again. But that happened because that appendage is still holding the earth. And we got a picture of that appendage, actually. But the earth, that's the last thing is all the animals, all the life here. And once all the life here goes, all the memory goes too. And the baby can be birthed, but it's going to be without memory. And there's things, spiders, other things waiting for that birth to happen. So when that birth happens, that baby will be eaten also. And it's called Paradise. It's in the Sistine Chapel. It's called Jesus Entering into Paradise. And then the very top two looks like tablets, but which are eyes. You're going to see in the top left one a woman that's in water that's giving birth, but it looks like men there waiting at the birthing area for that baby, and she's being held down. And so that's what these spider hybrid people are wanting. They want to destroy the entire earth, but they also need to corrupt every one of us, because there's no judgment for a corrupt person if the next one's corrupt. And if they're all corrupt, there's no judgment. And that means everybody gets wiped out. But like, what's his name?
So many times in the Bible, when
Sodom
we say, is there just one? Is there just one good man? Can we find just one? Yeah.
And then
10,
God
no 5, no.
destroys that entire area. and that will happen again.
Because this is a battleground, and it has been since the beginning. And it's interesting that the spider analogy, some people would say it's an analogy, and some people say it's absolutely real. But I think that's it. I mean, I think that's what, we're dealing with. And it doesn't shock me that it's a spider, because that is what these things do. When you see them, they'll crawl under somebody's vehicle. I told the story, or maybe he came on, I can't remember. It was a guy from Tennessee. I talked to him a couple times. He's a really, really nice guy. But he has, like Charles Hamill, Charles was telling me today, he had night terrors until just a few months ago. I mean, it's crazy how long these things can plague your dreams. And I wouldn't say dreams, I say nightmares is what they do. But this thing crawled under it was a Dogman-like creature that crawled under his vehicle and lifted up his truck. Like he had like a Colorado truck. Not a huge truck, but still something that's big enough to crawl and make it go up in the air off of its tires. And it crawled out from under it. And I'm like, that is the creepiest thing that you can do to me. It's like, if you're just like standing there, you're looking menacing and terrifying, and then you start crawling around, that it gets really weird. And we've had people talk about these chupacabra looking creatures, and they morph from being wolf-like all of a sudden into this weird, almost like a reptilian looking thing. And it's flopping around and undulating. And people have shot them. There was a guy in Peru that told me point blank. He was from Peru. He was not Peru, Puerto Rico. I worked with him. Nice guy. We worked at this treatment plant together years ago doing security. And he told me, he says, man, my grandfather shot one of these things, and it flipped around and was undulating like my words, but that's what it was. He was describing. And it was like part of it was flipping around. And he described it. He said it was like The Thing. Like John Carpenter's The Thing, the way it was just, and these things are so menacing and creepy. And when he told me this, and if I remember correctly, Scorpion was there too. We were in the office and we were talking about it. And he told us, he's like, man, my grandfather's, shot this. And he's like, and I was a kid. I remember just vaguely as a kid, and then we had this creature, and get this, they hung it on a fence like it would like they would a coyote or something, and then it disappeared. But we had another guy, the people from Giddings, you remember, we described it as a gugwe. Anthony and myself and my brother and Scorpion had talked to this guy, and him and his sons and his nephews who worked on the ranch told us that they had shot one of these creatures. But here's the weird thing. They shot this creature. We say gugwe because that's just a slang term for something that's in between a Dogman and a Bigfoot, as you would say, a morph, a hybrid. Yeah, like something that's not the morph. What's it called? The mutation. The mutation, right? So he says the crazy thing is, he says that we shot this creature and we hung it on the fence. And I said, how did you do that? He goes, because it was a coyote. So I'm listening to this guy, and I'm like, what do you mean? And he's like, that like, he kind of lost me there. He goes, oh, well, let me explain. He goes, I didn't mean to confuse you. He goes, but when we shot it, we figured out that we went up to it, and it was just a giant coyote. And I said, okay, when you shot this thing and your horse was rearing and freaking out, if it was just a coyote, the horse would have been doing that, because a horse would kick a coyote and dies like that. I've actually seen a donkey kick a coyote 30 feet in the air. I'm not even joking. Dead on arrival. And I'm not a fan of coyotes because I have animals and I don't like them being killed by them. I don't like hogs either. And they're a menace. They're a nuisance animal here in Texas. But this guy, he says, my horse did it rear? He says, no, it didn't. After I shot it, going up to it, it did. And when it first encountered it, they were rearing up. And I said, that's not going to rear up if it's a coyote. Okay. Though it calmed down after it was dead, put it that way. But then when it went up to it, it kept like kind of backing up, and he had to get off of the horse and go out into the brush to retrieve this thing. He's a braver guy than me, because if I saw a creature that looked like something in between a Bigfoot and a Dogman, I'm not going near it. I don't care if it's been shot or not. It'll pretend.
Yeah.
And so he goes up to it, and it's like a coyote. So get this. This thing is surrounded by like 5 men with rifles and high-powered rifles and horses. So it decided, and dogs. The dogs were going crazy. So they had it cornered, And what did he say? He said they hung it on the fence, right, Anthony? And this thing, they said it was a warning to other coyotes, and they thought, well, maybe our eyes were just playing tricks on us. His one nephew, Neil, and Neil was really, he's a smart kid. And he's not a kid. He's like Anthony's age. I'm old, so he's, kid to me. But Neil said, this is not a coyote. He's like, Uncle, this is not, you don't leave that there. Right? He goes, we shouldn't leave that there. That is not correct. Their neighbor, who's a Native American, is a Karankawa, like a Tonkawa, sorry. And he tells him, he says, you shouldn't leave that on the fence. That's not a normal predator. That is something else. And he tells him, don't leave it there. And he says, nothing will happen to it. There won't be any maggots. Nothing's going to eat it. The next day they find a pelt, and it's just, there's like mush, like goo inside of it. No bones, nothing. It was so weird. And when they took a picture of it, when they showed it to me, it was just a blurry mass. So weird. And it was like this, not to be graphic or gross, but a pink sludge that came out of it through its anus and its mouth. This was not a coyote. It just escaped. It just left some of its flesh there.
Yeah.
The skeleton gone. Do you guys, now I got to ask, have you guys come across anything like that? Does that happen to you guys? Anything like that?
Well, a lot of different things that we came across.
That in particular.
Not the stripping of the skull from just, but it does skin. These others will skin it. They'll also mush the stomach area and force the insides to come out of the anus part.
Mm-hmm.
They will stick their hands down the gullet and pull the stomach area out through the mouth, or
Turn it inside out.
Turn it inside out to eat that part.
Mm.
But they are cannibals, and they will pretty much eat. If anything is left, they're going to eat it.
Why? And I guess suppose you're referring to like a Bigfoot, like a Sasquatch type creature, right, or whatever you would call that.
Yeah, but the hybrids, the
A rake
predator
will do
Bigfoot
that.
hybrids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A what? A wraith?
A rake.
Rake. Okay, yeah, like the white.
Same thing.
Just hairless.
Is that what? See, now that's the debate. We've had that so many times, and I've had somebody in a Bigfoot group recently. I didn't start it. I was just watching. I wasn't participating. Everybody's like, "Oh, you started that." I ask a question, and people start firing shots. I'm not. Hey, man, I just asked a simple question like one time about that. And there's a rake. It's a fake creepypasta or whatever. And I said, I don't care what you call it. It still exists. You can call it Bubblicious fisheye. It's still real. I mean, it wasn't about that. But somebody had said something about the rake and these things actually fighting with Bigfoot and Dogman. They're like, well, that thing's not real. And I'm like, the hell it's not. A lot of people I know personally have seen it.
Yeah.
The thing is, why is it so far-fetched that they would fight one another? They don't care. They're not. I hate this notion that they're on the same team together. Yes, demons will appear in clusters. I have told people that. That's why when somebody takes a picture and you'll see like these, Abe Seus is just an example. Bettina is another one. But you'll see it. They'll be like these weird like faces. And it's not pareidolia. We got some of those at Apache Pass. And so when you take those pictures, people are like, well, I see a face there, I see a face there, I see a face there, there, Yeah. But here's the thing. This phenomena or whatever, like I said, it's not pareidolia, and I tell people that's because they'll travel in groups. But don't think for a second that they won't break off and kill one another the first chance they get, because they're vicious. They don't care.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they have an appetite, and they're cannibals.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Dogman, or we call them walking wolves because we respect the dog. But a walking wolf and a Bigfoot and a chupacabra, a Wendigo, a Mothman, they'll all run together. They're all looking for food. They all work together as far as attaining other foods.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't attain enough food, I'm still hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the smallest? Who's the weakest? Or if one of them gets wounded, just like a chicken, like a group of chickens, if one of the chickens is bleeding, the other chickens are going to come peck on it and peck on it and peck on it and peck on it until they get it down. And then they're just going to feed on that chicken, just like, and that's why we always say that the predators are very cautious. It's not that they're afraid. They don't want to get wounded.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to smell like blood going back to
death sentence.
Yeah, it is a death sentence because they're all going to be sitting there like, we haven't ate, but there's one bleeding right here, and there's that blood, there's that craving, there's that spider DNA.
Yeah. It's like Lord of the Rings when the one orc goes down, they're like, well, meat's back on the menu. And they all just start eating it. And it's just disgusting. And it shows you what they are.
Yeah.
I crushed one ant the other day and looked down a few minutes later, and there was all the other ones right over there on top of it, trying to eat it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this predator behavior comes from somewhere. And even if you were a person that's not devout in the faith, let's just say for hypothetically, you're just an atheist person, you would say that that's evolution, that this something, it evolved from this being. That's the same thing. Even if you didn't believe, you would still have to rationalize it and say it came from somewhere. The first the scorpions came from the ocean. I think they said 130 million years ago or some number that they came up with.
Water.
The dark, murky water.
The dark water. Yeah, the dark water. And then
Space is water.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if that thing comes up out of the water and just decides, I want to crawl around on land, and supposedly the scorpion is the predecessor of the spider, supposedly. So what if, hypothetically, if this appendage is actually a scorpion's tail, the stinger? Could that be? Or would it be this? Does it have to be the spider?
I didn't understand.
It's saying the appendage that you're talking about, could it be
The stinger.
spitter's tail? I mean, the
Oh,
scorpion
no.
stinger.
No, it is
The
a,
spider came after.
it is a,
or before the scorpion.
yeah, the scorpion came after, is a mixture of a crustacean with the spider, which made a crab, which made a scorpion, which made all the crustaceans. But also when it mixed with the regular fish, it made a octopus.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at October, the zodiac sign is the M, and the M is the symbol for the spider, because if you look at an M, it's a spider with two arms looking right at you.
Got that wrong.
But at the symbol, the zodiac sign is that M with a point.
Yeah.
And that's a scorpion right there.
That, and it's so creepy too, because, okay, and I don't know if Scorpion's in the chat, but his nickname is Scorpion, but he had one. He had one. His name was Samson. It's the only time in my life that I ever handled, and Anthony, you've heard us talk about that guy.
Yeah.
Samson was really chill. He was an emperor scorpion. And so Scorpion bought him at PetSmart, of all places. They used to sell these at PetSmart, and he got one. It was back in like 2000 or 2001, something like that. And he had it. And the first time I saw it in his room, I was like, what is that? And I walked in there because back in the day, when I was slimmer and trimmer, we all kind of had the same size, his shorts were, I was like, went in there to put his, like, was in my laundry, whatever. And I looked down and there's this black scorpion in a terrarium thing. And I said, what is that? And he says, dude, that's Samson. And he goes, he's pretty cool. And he took him out. So, I gave him a chance, and me and my brother and my other friend Squid, we were there. And he opens up the top and he throws like a bug in there. And this thing goes and stings it and eats it. Well, being the kind of people we were back in the day, we weren't against like a bug fight,
Yeah.
So we went around and we cut. What is that? You heard that?
Let me go check.
You don't got to check. We know it's not a person. But anyway, we heard something. But so we started catching spiders. and throwing them in there. And this scorpion killed every single one of them we threw in there. He killed every one of them. And Scorpion, my friend Scorpion, would take him out and play with him and mess with him. And he would move his tail and he would go back. He never stung any of us. Never, not once. And I used to drink. I'm not gonna lie, and I got a little tipsy and did some things, and I picked him up by his tail, and I would show people, and they were like, "Dude, that thing's gonna sting you," and it stung. I think it stung my brother and my other friend, but they said it was kind of like a wasp sting. You know, it wasn't bad. It didn't hurt too bad, which is still painful, but because they were messing with it, you know, too much. But he never did anything to me, and it was the only one that I ever handled or touched. And we had him for a couple of years, and then one day he was just dead. And you know, and so that was it. And so Scorpion threw him away. He did. He said, "Dude, he was your pet for 2.5 years. You're just gonna throw him in the trash?" He's like, "What am I gonna do with the dude?" I was like, "Well, bury it out." I don't know. He was pretty cool. I mean, he was the only one of them that was like that. So he was a credit to his species, but he was pretty tame. He was pretty chill. We didn't really have any problems with him. He didn't get loose or run around the house. I've heard of this, you know, happening. But one of my friends had tarantulas. And get this, the minute it gets out, it tries to bite him. And then there were two of them. And eventually one of them got into the cage with the other one and killed and ate it. That's just what they do.
Yeah.
It's in their nature to do that. And so I tell everybody, I was like, scorpions, I don't like them. But I did have a positive experience with one. It was the only arachnid I've ever been not close to, but like friendly with. And so I was like, okay, you know, that's fine, whatever. But spiders, I can't do. I don't want them in my house. I don't want anything to do with them. I don't give a crap about the stories about, oh, a house spider's good luck. Who came up with that? Some witch?
Witch.
You know, I mean, hey, spiders are good luck. When I was 11 years old, Jerry and Ella, I don't know if I told you this, but I was having a nightmare, and it was the one time, and I call it the hag. So I was dreaming, I had my eyes closed, and I was dreaming, and there was this spider coming down on my face, and I was like, and I opened my eyes, and I remember I was 11 years old, and it was the second to the last day of school, so I was really happy it was about to be summer, because back then I liked summer. I hate it now, but it was like right there, and then I threw the covers up like a sheet. All I had was a sheet because it was hot, you know. And then I saw what it was. I saw a woman, a witch, a hag, like with the nose coming down, even like the quintessential, like she had like this hook, and then it was like this thing on her nose, like a wart. It was like a witch, like you would draw in a cartoon or something. There's that word again, but yeah. And then her hand came down over like my face. I've talked about it on the show before, but I don't think I've told you guys. But it was like right there. And then Anthony's mother, my oldest sister, she opens the door and she's like, "Hey, pendejo, get up to go to school. What are you doing?" And I jumped up and I was like, "I saw a spider, a witch. I don't know what it was." And she's just like, yeah, okay, whatever. She closed the door and walked out. But I did. But it was crazy because it started out like a dream about a spider. And then it ended up being what I think was like a bruja, like a hag, a witch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is that something you guys have heard before? Something like that?
Yeah.
Also, there's this one place that's way up in the north I was at, and I was clearing some land, and I ran across these 3 circles, but their alignment was, one was going to the solstice, summer. One was in the middle, a little further out for the equinox, and one was a little back for the winter solstice. So I knew the pattern, and so I cleared that area, and I dug down into the summer solstice, and I found a burnt tarantula, plastic spider, and it also had a hamburglar. Back in the day, McDonald's had a hamburglar. It was like a bandit hamburger person. You get in the kids' toys or Happy Meals. And in the middle one, there was a stone that glowed green in the evening time. And then the last one, there was duct tape, money, and a bone. And so I took everything out of those 3 circles, and I put them all in mason jars or glass jars and sealed them up. And that dug up that head. I mean, it was a head. It was a stone that looked like a baby's head, but it glows green at nighttime. And then I took that money and the duct tape and put in the bone. And I don't know if it's a human bone or not, but I put that in a glass jar also. And the next day, another guy who's Navajo, he came to visit me, and he's a medicine person also. So he comes to the house and he said, "Man, I had this dream last night." I hadn't seen him in a long time. And he said, "I had this dream last night that this spider was holding me down, and it was in my dream, and it was just over me with his arms and pushing down on me, and I could see the fangs and everything." And he grabbed hold of the fangs and was holding it because he didn't want it to pierce him. He said, I woke up sweating and scared. He said, "I just knew I had to come see you." And I said, "All right, well, give me 1 second." So I went and I grabbed that one jar with that tarantula spider. And it was a toy, but it was burnt in that thing with the hamburger, which is a bandit or one that's, it was a ritual area. But it was a bandit that's like a thief in the night. They'll come and steal things.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and got that jar. I said, "Did it look like this?" And he said, "That's exactly what it looked like." I said, "Well, don't worry. We got it sealed now." And he looked at it and he said, "Thank you." So he had to come and see me that next day because that dream was about that spider. And a lot of people were having dreams about that spider in that area until that happened. And
whoa. So somebody did like a brujeria, like a black magic.
Yeah. And that was area where a lot of kids were missing.
And it was like the leaders in the town.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. And I know that a lot of different, like I said before on the show, when you get to a certain point in criminality, you hit a wall. And the only way to go through that wall is to accept the use of brujeria, whatever, black magic. And I wouldn't do it. I was like, no, I won't do it. And some of my colleagues, they were like, "Well, patron, if you don't do this, then you're not going to, it's not going to work." It was time for me to go back to God where I belonged anyway. It wasn't, and my grandmother used to say this, of course, she's going to say, "Mijito is a good boy." Everybody's aunt and grandma, whatever's going to say, "You're a good child." Even though I absolutely was not on the good side. I was being bad, but they'd still love you. So they want to believe in So my grandmother on my dad's side, she told me, she says, "You're not a bad guy. You're just playing at being bad. And eventually that's going to catch up to you because the people that you're dealing with really are bad." She's like, and I told her, I said, "Well, I can handle these people." And I did. But you have to be a brutal, mean person to be able to handle yourself around these brutal, mean people. It is truly in their nature to be that way. But when I go back to my childhood, I was not truly that way. I couldn't hurt animals or even bugs. I couldn't torture them or do anything like some of these people I knew would do horrible things. And I couldn't do those kind of things or hurt somebody that was innocent for no reason. It was just not in my nature to be that way. Somebody says, Alexis Martinez says, "How does Wolf know so much Spanish?" Well, one time I was down near the Rio Grande and an old Mexican woman came up to me with a banjo and she says, "I'm going to teach you Spanish." And she began playing. And 3 days later, I knew how to speak it.
See.
Or maybe my mother.
He made a deal with the devil.
He made a deal with the devil
to learn that Mexican.
Learn that Mexican talk.
Yo habla español.
Well, Jerry, because you were down there, so but here's the statistic: 78% of Spanish-speaking individuals actually have native blood, and I'm no different. My mother's actually she's Spaniard and Comanche, but not really Mexican Indian so much as just but my mother would be Hispanic, I guess. My grandma actually didn't speak very good Spanish. She spoke another language called Nermana, which is the people's language, the Comanche. That's what it looked like?
Yeah, this was the where the summer solstice circle was, and this is where the equinox, and that's where the winter was. But there's also a stone there that looks like the appendage. I didn't know about this story till later, and I was going to go back and break that stone up because that is a symbol for the appendage that's in the sky also. And but that stone is still there, and hopefully one day go there and pull it out. Or
that's what that is. That little weird hook shaft looking thing. That's what that stands for.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's where that ceremony was, and has the bone there. So I think that's a human bone. I haven't had it analyzed.
It's also represented in the Aztec Sunstone and
wow.
in Dendra Zodiac.
Yeah, and that same symbol there is in the Aztec Sunstone and the Egyptian Dendra Zodiac.
That's
also.
where you begin to read it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And it's so tiny you just wouldn't even notice it. But it's there. And people didn't crawl way back into the caves and do this for art. They were trying to warn
It's kind of like the
their
last message.
children and grandchildren of what was coming,
And
of
some-
what they were hiding in those caves from.
And some of those wall arts that you see that's about as far as you could possibly get. And they're trying to inscribe, like, I'm as far as I could get, and these things are still coming. So I'm going to try to write this last message.
Wow. That's crazy. And when you think about this, there are so many. Is it Algonquin? I think it's an Algonquin legend too of a spider. They have a legend about it, and that it was like this, like it came from a star or something like that. If I remember correctly, I think it's Algonquin, and it's when you stop and you look at all these different native cultures. And I've said this before, and of course, it's popular for people to be like, "Well, the Native Americans or whatever," because they don't. They're just trying to piggyback on whatever so they can virtue signal their way out of whatever. But for me, it's very much real. And then not because I'm part either, but because, and I don't claim to be Native. A lot of people are like, I'm 188th Cherokee. So I'm okay. Yeah. All right. And the rest of you is an a-hole, but whatever. What we're talking, it's like, yeah, okay, dude, whatever guy, and just like, I'm Native. Yeah, you really look it too. Yeah, so do I, But if you met my grandmother, you'd be like, dang, but I do have the high cheekbones, But I tell people this. Do what?
Like Elizabeth Warren.
She claimed,
Pocahontas?
yeah, she claimed too.
A lot of people are claiming a lot of stuff, okay? But here's the thing. Like, look at my hair. This is my hair. It's not, I don't dye it. This is my, and my mom's side of the family, long black hair. Everybody. My Uncle Frank he was in his 70s. He finally started getting gray.
Yeah.
And Uncle Jaime, what is he, 72 or 71? Something like that?
Yeah.
He's finally getting gray. So I'm looking at them and they're like, it's from your mom's side. I'm like, yes. But funnily enough, my dad he's got a full head of hair. He didn't start going gray until a few years ago. He's in his mid 70s, like 74 or something like that. And so I'm in luck. I'm like, yes, my genetics are good, but that's that native blood. I'm pretty sure that it, the beard now, definitely Spaniard. I got that, but my dad's got a beard, but it doesn't grow like mine. It doesn't have this. That's the Spaniard. But I definitely have that gene to be, the native. When I shave off my everything, I look more native, and people have told me that. They're like, you look native. And also because I go out in the sun in the summertime and I'm red, and then they're like, you look native. I'm like, you're racist. But
I think you can see whenever I went out in the sun just the other day.
Yeah, you got the tan lines there, buddy. Yeah.
Just one day I just went out there.
Well, you look so much more native in person, though. When I meet you in person, you're like, dude, Jerry is absolutely native. But when and it's like people always want to say how much blood or whatever it is that they have. I'm a quarter, right? So, but that's lots more than most people. But I tell people all the time, like, I don't go around and try to say I'm native, whatever. But you have that in you. you know, and so you kind of have this belief, and I do believe that a lot of these native beliefs are real, and it's not. I don't think it's not, you know, because I'm part or whatever. It's just because I think that's the truth, and I have close ties with a lot of people in the native community, and I have read and studied a lot of native culture. Now, that's in my quest for the answers, because I want to know. I'm super hyper duper curious, and I've studied all these different legends and stories from Africa to Europe. I want to know. I want to know what the truth is. Everybody has a piece of the puzzle. I think you did a good job going around and trying to figure it out, Jerry. I saw the pictures of the different places you had been. Pretty interesting, man. And it's good to do your due diligence. You didn't just go, well, this is the truth, this is what, and then just stay at home and believe that. You went out and looked. And when you told me the story in person about when you told your mother, well, if you can tell me everything about the, you know, then I'll stay. And she was just like, okay, good luck. And
Yeah.
See you after a while.
Yeah.
and you did. You went out and you found what you believe were your truths, and I think you've uncovered quite a bit of that. And so, yeah, it's always a pleasure to talk to you guys. I look at this, though, and I tell people all the time, you know, and it's not me trying to pander or be close to natives or anything like this. I'm not that guy. I don't pander or be close to anybody. I just say, hey, this is who I believe, and this is what I believe. And people don't understand that you can change your views as you gain more knowledge and information. You should evolve as a person and become more closer to what is the truth.
Yeah.
And I did enjoy your first book. I'm glad that you have the next one out. What is it called? The new one?
We've got Bigfoot Gifters. This is a Spanish version. We're at our friend's house and they have it. And then Monster Spotters is the children's, but it's also got great illustrations for teaching the danger zones.
Oh, yeah.
What to look for, what pull downs are, bows, ambush blinds, embankment blinds, all the different things. It's got some photos in it. It's just really, really full of drawings and.
Oh, yeah. We've encountered those things.
Like for people with the short attention span, this will hopefully get them hooked enough to read this. And then, this is specifically for the people who are out there gifting and giving homage to these things, because they're being told to by these stupid programs and these stupid groups and these stupid clubs.
Ella throws it down with.
Yeah. We feel the same way.
You know, it's funny because, like, I've been saying this for a long time. I've been saying this same thing. This is not a good thing. There was a woman in Washington, and her and her sister, God bless them, they're good people. And one of the people from that show, Finding Nothing, I'm not going to say who, whatever, but it's just, they told them, oh, it'd be perfectly okay for your child. Your child's safe. They won't hurt you. These are like giant squirrels, and they live down there by the creek. And yeah, and they told them to take apples down there. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then they told them they like donuts. I'm like, I'm sure they do. I'm sure they'd like the child that's giving them the donut too. Mm-hmm. And I told, do not let your grandchildren. Do you remember that, Anthony? The lady was very sweet. But I told her, I said, ma'am, please. Do not let your children go down there alone. If you're, the adult supervised, whatever, I would even be really careful for you to go down there, because if they are seeing this creatures down there, you're in trouble, big time. And I hate to tell people that, because so many people, I have to. It's my duty, because so many people are just so blinded by this. And there is another group of ladies that do this. And they don't like me because they said that I'm spreading fear mongering, whatever. And I told them, I said, believe what you want. But the witnesses I've talked to tell a different story than what they cherry pick these stories. This one was good. And this is the prequel is what it is before something bad happens.
This page is based on a true story. It's one of my best friends from ever since junior high. It was her husband. Maybe I didn't hold it up long enough. Anyway, when he was a little boy, he was in Louisiana for a family reunion, and the kids were all walking down an old log, and they started hearing a Bigfoot. They heard something, pacing beside them through the woods, and it scared them. So they went back to the house, and then it was his turn to take a bath. And so he was taking a bath, and a giant hairy arm reached in through the open window and tried to snatch him out of the tub and out the window. Because he was slippery, it lost its grip, and he ran bare naked out into the room where the rest of the family was. That's how terrified he was. And he's in his 60s, and to hear him tell this story still to this day, his voice cracks. You can tell he's still got PTSD from it.
Mm-hmm.
So that illustration, and many of the illustrations in this book, are based on stories of situations that we know, people that we personally know. And it was kind of neat too, because we pray that the message be correct, the illustrations be correct, and things like that. And when he saw this book, or when he saw that page, he had my friend call me and say, that was exactly how that bathroom was set up. That's wild. How did she know that? And when it wasn't me that knew that, we really believe that this is
And
the
also-
calling that we have, is to teach people about the danger of these things in all their forms, predators in every form. And we always put in the spiritual warfare too. There's a lot of verses and things in that book. And what were you going to say?
Oh, I was going to say that a grandmother had bought that book just to help teach her grandchildren. And she had told us that her grandchildren got a little nervous about the book because of it's showing about the Bigfoot subject, I guess you would say. Got nervous about it. But she let the children know, if you're a child of God, so they can't touch you. You're off limits. It's the ones who are lukewarm, the ones who are rejected. But you're okay. So, and so that built their confidence back up. And they lived there probably 10 years, if not more. Now, the grandmother lived there longer, but they were staying with the grandmother. And after reading the book, they went to town for some groceries. And the kids were saying, well, there's a blind, there's a pull down, there's a bow, there's a bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that's exactly what she wanted for the children to know, is what to look for to identify that I'm not going to play there. That's a hunting area. That's a blind. I'm not going to go play in there. That's a pull down. That's
I'm not going to put my trampoline up next to the wood line. If my toys are just inside the wood line, I'm going to get an adult to help me come bring it back out of there, because sometimes they'll take them and they'll pull those toys and bikes and balls up into the woods, into the blinds, so it'll lure the children in there. Another thing they'll do is they'll steal small pets, especially the
White.
brown and white, or the little black and white, and it's that mottled color that's easier to hide within the dappled leaves. They'll steal those pets and use those to lure people in and lure children in, or naive, sweet, well-meaning people. They're perfect victims.
But now her grandchildren know exactly what to look for
And to avoid.
And before that, she couldn't say, this is what a Bigfoot will build. She didn't go out there and start building all the stuff for the children to see. They were going to town and they were pointing out all these signs.
It makes it really clear. And it was tricky to be able, it took a lot of thought and prayer and rewriting to make something that wouldn't terrify them, but would
Make
teach
them aware
and have them take it serious.
Yeah.
But also
and also to tell their
interested.
parents if they see these things.
Yeah, we did have, and you, I don't think we'll say their name on here, but we did have 2 Native children that read the book and did a review on it, a video review on it, and the boy's taken it to school a couple times to show his friends, and they seriously love it and are learning from it,
and some people are
keeping
even
their interest.
buying it just to put in libraries or leave it places for other people and other kids to read it.
Yeah.
We've left
Somebody
it
asked where you could get the book. Where do you get it?
on Amazon
Amazon?
called Monster Spotters
Yeah.
by Jerry Williams and Lead Tracker E.
Okay.
And then the other one is the Predator. The original was the Predator Bigfoot and the Spiritual Warrior's Path.
Mhm.
And this goes in. This is like a manual of what to look for out there. On Wednesdays, we have a series called Watching Wednesday on Jerry's channel, and basically we go through videos of other people in the woods, and it's not to pick on them. It's to say, look what they're missing. This is where they just walked past a blind. They're in a dangerous situation. Okay, this is where they need to look for spears, and sure enough, there will be that. But this is the book that if they had this manual, they wouldn't be walking into those situations. We know people who have been raped by these things.
Oh yeah, we've talked about that on the show, and there were these goofballs that were making fun of it, and I'm like, it's not a funny thing. It's not. People don't realize how, and I'm so sick of this. And on this, like I've said this on the show a million times, I'm sick of this culture where everybody thinks it's a big joke. Not only think it's a big joke, but they think that they believe in it. They think it's harmless.
Yeah.
I just can't stress enough that it's not. Whether it's a Dogman or a Bigfoot, it doesn't matter. I mean, they're not good, and I'm sick of this. Like thinking it's a giant monkey man running around the woods. It's an ape or whatever. That's not what this is.
A forest guardian.
No.
These things destroy the forest. They're not the guardians of the forest.
They make it
And
to
it's
one big
no
trap.
different than people
Yeah.
open a Ouija board. There are the people that make a joke out of doing the spirit boxes and the things like that. They're opening up all these doorways, all these thresholds, and getting themselves into trouble, or the people that move in after something happens to them or they get scared and move out. They've developed this situation by feeding predators here or bringing these entities into homes there, or, they're causing problems that will catch up with them eventually, or the people they care about.
Yeah. Andres has a question. He says, are you guys concerned that people will use this knowledge to make contact with these beings?
They're already doing it.
Yeah, this knowledge is to stop them.
Yeah,
Or
it's the
to
only
deter, to break
yeah,
it.
it's our best chance of being able to stop them from doing it. It's why we have Watching Wednesdays, and really why we pulled this chapter out of the book that we're working on, because there's so many people out there gifting. In Louisiana, not too long ago, they had a festival, but right before it, some high school students were in the camping out in the forest or hanging out in the forest, and the Bigfoots were getting very aggressive with them, scared them enough that they called the sheriff's department to come out there and help them. Well, what teenagers do you know hiding out in the woods want the sheriffs to come? And then these idiot women at the
What you say?
that were putting on the next festival were encouraging kids to knowing this had just happened with those teenagers. They're encouraging kids to do the wood knocking and to bring money in for their festival. It's infuriating.
It is like playing with a Ouija board. That's the connection here in a Paranormal Roundtable and you guys' channel. There's your channel right there, Jaranella. People don't realize though that they say, well, this is not paranormal. Yes, it is. It is all connected.
It is.
There are people, and I'm going to tell a story. Well, I say story, but it's really it's a person's encounter. Well, it's a couple people's encounter from Charlotte, North Carolina. It's going to come out on Sunday. It's the day after tomorrow, folks. Tune in. This woman, they had this entity coming out of a mirror. And it was very much like a Bigfoot. It was. I mean, and you can't tell me that they don't use portals. And there are people who have been saying for years that they are taking people in the state and national parks. They're like, they snatch people up and they don't even hear it. And I said, that's just like a spider, isn't it?
Yeah.
The spider is silent. It just, and it grabs and it could just take you.
Yeah.
And I think these things do this. And I believe in the cities, well, I'd say in the countryside too, vampires are doing what they do. People have been encountering these beings that they pretend to be human, but they're really not. They're just a vessel, a meat vessel for a spirit, evil entity. And you have these Dogman, werewolves, upright wolves, whatever. I mean, they're doing what they do, and you have Bigfoot doing what it does. They're all part of that same paranormal soup. I mean,
and also, this also answers a lot of paranormal questions because you've got a translucent Bigfoot in that same room or in that building that you just walked into. It goes translucent and it knocks something over, or they see a shadow moving. That's a Bigfoot, or that's a hybrid of a Bigfoot that's in that same room. Then they get heat signatures, and then when it goes translucent, it also blocks the heat. So now you got to look for a blue, or you got to look for a green, or you got to look for that shadow, that dark. It's not going to be red. It's not going to be white. It's not going to be a regular heat signature like a person. And so whenever they hear something knock or throw something, they're thinking it's a ghost or paranormal.
mm-hmm.
Bigfoot trying to get you out of that area.
Yeah, that's man. There was a guy who gave me and Armando a story years ago of one of these from the Sam Houston National Forest, and this thing was chasing him through the woods. I lost the guy's name. Was Nathan or something like that, or not Nathan? That was the guy from Mississippi. I think it was Mississippi. This guy he got chased through the Sam Houston National Forest, and he couldn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
He said it was like a ghost, and me and Armando both told him, well, it could have been a Bigfoot that was cloaking itself.
Yeah,
because that's what they do. And he's like, oh, I thought it was a spirit, And there was another guy who had one climb up near Brownwood, Texas, climbed up in a tree stand, and he saw it like right there, like translucent, and he was looking at it. And he didn't know what it was, so he took the butt of his rifle and he poked it, and it grabbed it, and then he started smacking it, and he saw it fall backwards, and when it hit the ground, it kind of made like this sort of like a poof, you could see it, like there was this dust up, and for a second there, it looked like a Bigfoot. I would say that would be more like a Gugwe because it was like a Bigfoot, but with like a little bit of a snout, and they look kind of like a hybrid. But that thing was definitely going to. He asked me what I thought it was going to do, and I said it's probably going to kill you and eat you. I mean, I don't pull any punches on the show, and people don't like that. They're like, "Why do you say that?" Because it's the truth. Would you rather me say, "Well, it was going to invite you to go watch the Cowboys, and you could drink beer with it"? And that's not what's going to happen. It's going to do something bad to you. Because he was there chilling out on a Sunday evening, and in the stand up there in the fall, and he said, "Well, I'm not going to go back out into the woods like where that's at." And I said, "Well, you don't know where that's at because anywhere could be where that's at. That's why these people are going missing in the state and national park." And I keep saying that,
especially in that part.
And there's multiple. They're never alone.
Yeah,
So,
and they're different sizes.
yeah.
That's what we're going to talk about on Sunday. There's different sizes. Yes. Yeah.
And even whenever they have litters, one could be a Dogman, one could be a Bigfoot, one could be a 1 foot one could be a 15-foot one, but they're never alone. So even in that building where they hear a noise and they think it's paranormal, there's going to be another one that just ran past the window.
Yeah, they think there's one. First it was over here and then it was over there. No, there's one there and there's one there.
There's one there. And so they'll go out and chase this one, get a glimpse of it. But most of the time, whenever that's distraction, because they're either in that room, they're getting real close to that one. Then all of a sudden they hear a noise in another room or a door slams behind them. But it's to cover that one that's just getting too close or about to walk into it. They'll do this out in the field too. If we're getting too close to one, you'll hear coyotes go off.
Oh yeah.
But then you'll hear maybe a crunch because we got too close.
Cover
and then
noise.
the other, it's a cover noise. It's either to move forward or to move back, but they will cover each other.
They'll do that with traffic too. If they hear cars coming, that's when they'll move.
Yeah, or crickets, or they'll make the sound of crickets. They'll make the sound of birds to cover their tracks when they walk.
Very cunning.
Some people have said that when the forest goes silent, that's when you know something's around. But I've said this before to people, to witnesses that have talked to me, and I've said, well, what if they were the ones making the noise in the first place and they just went silent so that they could sneak up on you? You know what I mean? To trick you.
We call that the Bigfoot Symphony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
'cause some of them will sound like the tree frog. The other group will sound like locust. The others will sound like a barking dog or something. The other one will sound like a bird. And then they just all go quiet at the same time. They've done Aetherberg, and you know,
Yeah.
there,
Yeah. I know. I have read. Yeah. And when I was reading your book, okay, so that right there, the quiet that's what you're talking about, the Bigfoot Symphony. And I mean to interrupt, but I had to say this, and it's very important. That is, guys, you got to read this book. Okay, it's really interesting. I have a copy of it. I think you signed it. I'm not sure, but if not, I need to get one signed from you. But I need to get some. I need to order like some and keep them on hand, and I'll do them for the giveaways. I'd like to have them for the giveaways. So we'll talk after this, and you can just message me whatever. I'd like to get at least 10 or 15 of them. But so here's the thing: when this forest does this, because these things will come and whatever they eat, they'll start to mimic it. And they'll sound like it. And I'm not even joking. I have had people, we'll talk about it on Sunday. Guys, I didn't want to give it away because I got excited when you said that. But there was this woman who claimed that it was like everything went quiet. And then she witnessed this slowing down of time and this blur hit her.
Blurs.
And I told her that's like the Japanese, they call it satori. It's like when you're in an accident or a wreck and you're seeing everything in slow motion. And she's like, and it was like she got hit like by a freight train. People describe getting hit in the water by a shark. It's like you get hit, boom, and their body just jolts everywhere. Same thing as a wreck. And that's what these things do. And they ambush you. And you're out there. And I can't believe how many of my colleagues will go and run around out in the woods alone and look for these things. And I'm like, you're out of your freaking depth. You're out of your mind because you don't see the danger. You don't believe it. I mean, even them attaching themselves to you in a spiritual way because they couldn't get you physically. They'll do that too.
Exactly. Oh, and that's another thing drives us batty is the people encouraging the mind speak. We teach how to stop that. You don't want to open your mind up to anything. You close your mind off to those things because that's how they attach. That's how they attack you in your sleep. They begin to influence your behavior. But they think they're special. Oh, it's talking to me. And they always give them these.
Oh, they're talking to you. This is not
Flower and Buttercup, and it's always these ridiculous names for. Yeah, sure, I'm Buttercup.
They always say like, oh, big alpha, big male, or the big poppy, or some weird crap. And right, Anthony, how many times have we heard that?
No, yeah.
They always give these weird little monikers,
nicknames, whatever,
goofy nicknames,
pet names.
And we just roll our eyes because it's like, dude, you don't realize what you're dealing with. Yeah. Let's go out into the ocean and pet the sharks. And this is Big Tiger.
Yeah.
It's going to be.
But they have a relationship with them.
It's going to be Big Snacky is what's going to happen. It's like, dude. Oh gosh.
I've seen it, a mile away, so I got a relationship,
I have a bond.
I saw a blur when I was driving through Arizona. Yeah, me and Bigfoot have been talking a lot. I think it's going to happen. We're going to hook up.
We have an understanding.
Yeah.
You and the devil have an understanding, and the people don't like when I talk about it, very frank and open about it. I think eventually more people are going to hopefully come around because, as Charles said, and Charles being one of your colleagues and a good friend of mine, I love the guy. He's a great guy, but he's like what he said to me earlier in the conversation, and it stuck with me. And I told you, Anthony, I told Nellie when we were leaving. He says it's about time that everybody gets right with Christ real fast.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Real quick, because it is in a time right now. You will not make it without Jesus. I don't care what anybody tells you. You can walk around in circles and you can do mental gymnastics and tell yourself that this is that and you can handle this and that. You can't do anything without Christ. I don't care what anybody says. It's not.
Gist of it right there.
And even in our ancient teachings, when somebody makes a connection, that's a lifetime connection.
Mm-hmm.
But that demon, that entity, doesn't want just flesh and blood. It wants the soul too.
main goal.
And that's a price too high to pay, but people don't know that's the main objective.
Yeah, and when I tell people, they ask me how many times I've had an encounter with this Dogman type creature. I tell them I saw it with my physical eyes once, but I'm convinced there were at least 3 others times where it was around because I could sense it and I had that same feeling of foreboding. And it was a connection, but it was a very bad one because I think this thing was putting me on notice. And I will tell you this, I'm not ashamed to admit this. In 2008, in the summer of 2008, I was inside of a building in Round Rock that was, and now there's the houses and stuff. We drove by it the other day, Anthony, right? There's like houses all around it, and there's buildings, businesses. But at the time, it was like on the edge of the frontier. There was just a bunch of woods. And I was walking around on the outside of this building because that was my job. And I was good friends with the guy that was building the place, and he trusted me. So I did my job. And then when he came in the next day, and I told him, I said, his name was Fritz, last name was Fritz. I said, I'm not going to be going out by the edge of those woods anymore. I'm just going to tell you. What do you think? I was like, I think there's something out there. And he goes, oh, come on, you're a city boy. I said, I'm not. I'm actually not. 15 years in the country before. And I was like, then I moved to the city, and I told him I saw something that looked demonic, and I didn't go into a long drawn out explanation. I didn't expect him to understand. And he goes, okay, fair enough. Just look out the window and make sure there's nobody breaking in. As long as nobody breaks into the property, I'm cool. But I was very honest about it. I told him I'm not going to do that because something stalked me. I didn't see it, but I went back inside and I locked the front doors, and I went to the storeroom that was back behind one of the main offices, and I just locked myself in there. And you could see the cameras in there, and that was it. And that's all I did because I was terrified. And I spent the entire night being terrified until the morning. And I know because when I closed my eyes, I could see that creature. I could see what it was. And it was that thing I saw when I was 15. I was not interested in being, I felt like I was on the menu.
Yeah.
You were.
Yeah.
I was. And it happened again at my house. It was in my backyard. And I've said this before on the show, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I laid there paralyzed. Luckily, I had 2 big dogs. I had a German Shepherd and a Mastiff. That when these creatures were around, they would, at first they kind of cowered when something would move, and then they got brave because I was brave, and I would stand up and I would yell, and then they would get, aggressive. And they were super, super well trained, and they just weren't afraid. As long as I wasn't afraid and didn't show fear, they weren't afraid. And so, they stood guard over me, and I was paralyzed with fear, and I knew something. I could hear it walking around the backyard. I felt like it was there. Didn't see it because I didn't get up and look. And the scary thing was that my back door was open. And there was just a screen. And this is in town. 2 days later, my brother can attest to the Scorpion can too. We were all, staying at that place, and my friend Willie. And so this game warden comes. He's knocking on doors, and he says that they found a deer that had been torn apart. So they thought there might have been a predator in the area, and they thought it might be coyotes. And then, they said that the week before they had found a hog that had been torn apart and partially eaten by a large predator. So they were just letting everybody know. And the game warden was asking if we had any idea if maybe somebody did it and then mutilated it with a knife or something, they were trying to figure out what it was. And when I closed that door, I told my brother, I said that whatever was in that backyard at that house, that, it could have been what did that. I mean, it's just the idea that I got in my head because I know what I felt. And I felt this evil, evil feeling from whatever was back there. And if I didn't have my dogs, with me, I probably would have just melted into the couch and, so I just prayed and prayed and prayed. And, but I do believe that was, and I think that was in 2003. So that was a long time after, but still.
There's a lot of people, and even if they don't admit it, they've all had that paralyzing feeling where they just laid in bed or they pull covers over their head or tuck their sheets underneath their feet or something. Everyone's has had some kind of experience.
Create a threshold.
Yeah. Well, you guys, thank you for coming on. It's been over 3 hours, and time just flies. And 3 hours and 10 minutes. And we can probably talk forever, man. But dude, yeah, thank you guys for coming on. It's good to see you guys again and talk to you, Jerry. It's always a pleasure. And thank you, Ella. You're one of our moderators for the show. So yes, and I do want to put me down for some books. So because we had a few, but we gave them away, and I'd like to have, if you could autograph them, guys, and then we could, give them to some of the listeners. And that's only for a handful of you, though. The rest of you are gonna have to go to Amazon, buy the book. Check it out, because it is a field guide, and believe it or not, and I believe this myself. I'm a supporter of Jerry and Ella, and I believe this. And I came to these conclusions on my own. Jerry didn't come down and go, look, man, I got to convince you of this shit. All right. You need to believe. No, he didn't do that. He just came down and we hung out because we had like minds, and I already believed. And what you told me and what Ella told me had basically confirmed what I had already been thinking. Like, this is what it is. I believe this. If you're intelligent, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Or something bad will make you figure it. You'll have to figure it out. It's up to you. You can read a book and go, maybe I should do this and behave, or you can go and be stupid and then let nature or whatever unnatured figure it out for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, folks. So check out the book. You get it at Amazon. Bigfoot. This, is not your friend. Sorry. People don't want to hear that. They want to hear that it's a good thing. It's a cuddly. It's Harry and the Hendersons. It's not. Be on your toes, folks. And I can tell you, there are a lot more encounters with this thing that are not pleasant than are. I'm not cherry picking. I'm telling you. I've told a few encounters on this show. People say, well, nothing happened to me, or if it was, whatever. Fair enough. But they're very rare compared to and why did it do those things for you?
Yeah.
Ask that question. A drug dealer.
How many years does a groomer work on its eventual prey?
Exactly. Like I was going to say, a drug dealer will give you a few hits and say, hey, go, it's free. And then you come back and go, oh, that's going to be $50. Yeah.
Yeah. Later.
Right now you're useful. You bring other people to me. Yeah.
Until you're not. And then it's like, get out of here, oh, you don't have money? Well, go suffer. That's what happens. And they hook you in, that's the whole dope game. And that's what these things are doing. Yeah. I'm not saying they're peddling dope. I'm saying they're setting you up.
In a way.
Yeah, in a way. All right, folks. Thank you for tuning in, guys. Anything else?
Anything else?
Can we say a real quick prayer?
Sure. Absolutely.
Thank you, Father, just for this time that we've had together to be able to get the news out to people. We pray your hand of protection over our own channels and over Paranormal Roundtable. We pray that you will bind the enemy in every kind of way, Lord, because we know that you love your children and that you want your children to be safe, Lord. And so give people the eyes to see and the ears to hear, and give us all discernment in what is correct, and let our words always be pleasing to you. We love you, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen.
Nice. Yeah. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for showing up, and everybody that's a part of the audience. I got to go to work, but everybody else, go enjoy yourselves. Go check out Jerry and Ella's channel on YouTube. Go binge watch and read the book. Do what you got to do, man. Two of my favorite people in the Bigfoot community. We need more people like this, telling the truth and not being afraid. You get ridiculed, so do I. But so what? It's worth it, because you could save people.
Yeah. Yeah, and this book is actually, we've been told, has saved lives already.
Yeah.
And will save more if they read it.
Yeah.
Yes. And if people accept and understand the truth. I know that people don't like it. It's not popular. Someday, everybody's eyes will be open. They will. One way or the other. All right, guys, I'm going to let you run. Thank you for tuning in, guys. And I'll let my guests leave. Y'all be safe.
Yeah, have a good night.
Love you guys. Bye.
Love you too.
So Jerry and Ella Williams, good people, been friends for quite a while, and I believe they're doing a community service. I mean, people are going to get upset. They're going to say, well, you don't like Bigfoot or whatever. Honestly, I don't really like Dogman either. I don't think that these are good things. When people ask me the point, I think they're Nephilim. I really do. I think that's what they are. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. That's just the way. That's how you believe. I respect you, and you're right to believe how you want. But if you're thinking that these things are your friends, you're wrong. I wouldn't walk into the hood and be like, "Hey, man, these Crips and Bloods are my friends." No, they may not have issue with you because you didn't, whatever at that point in time. But at some point, if you keep going around them, they're probably going to want to know what you're doing. And if they take an interest in you, then you could be in trouble. Because let me tell you something, these areas where they are, stay out of them. You don't belong there. It always trips me out when people want to buck the tiger. They want to go out into these places where predators are, whether they're animal predators or they're spiritual predators. For what? So you can say you did it? So you're cool. Makes you cool, right? Until something happens to you and you become a statistic, another missing person. And this isn't fear mongering, it's just the truth. Folks, I got to run. I got to get out of here. Okay. So I will see you guys on Sunday. Epic encounter on Sunday that encounters we got to talk about. I'll see you guys. Good night.